Yeah, exactly.
How's tonight doing?
All right, all right. Can you hear me out there? Thank you very much. I'm Sig from NOLA by NOLA, and we're very happy to have you all here today. And for those watching on the internet, we are actually streaming this today. So wave to your friends and family at home. There you go, nicely done. On the New Orleans Jazz Museum's website and YouTube channel, is that what it is? YouTube channel, yes, there you go. I want to thank the Jazz Museum for having us here. This is awesome. We're here today and tomorrow for NOLA by NOLA Talks, which is a 2-day conference, hypersensitive on music industry topics that involve and hopefully help through conversation the music industry here in New Orleans. As I said, my name is Sig. I'm one of the founders of NOLA by NOLA. The guy next to me is also part of the NOLA by NOLA team. We'll get to that in a second. But as we dive into this, we will do questions and answers at the end of panels. And again, we appreciate you all being here. So give yourself a round of applause. That would be fantastic. I can maybe get more applause. Don't forget, because it hasn't been spoken out loud, there is a bar out there. It is a cash bar. And there are, it just so happens, there are free Stellas from our good sponsor, Stella Artois, making NOLA by No Cover free. And this year, for some facts on NOLA by NOLA, during NOLA by NOLA, which started on September 25th and goes for 11 days through October 5th, we have 360 concerts, 360 shows at 56 venues around town. And via NOLA by No Cover, a program that last year and the year before that was a single day on Frenchman where we'd open it up, and from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. it was free music at all the clubs. We decided to evolve that to involve the entire city throughout the entire time of NOLA by NOLA. And we just marked our 100th free concert during NOLA by NOLA with the addition of the Blues Picnic happening at the Broadside on Sunday. So 100 free shows. Thank you, Stella. And thank you for everyone who's been going to shows and supporting NOLA by NOLA, our venues, our musicians, and cultural artists. With that, shall we start? Shall we do our first panel? Thank you. Protecting fan experiences in challenging economic times. To my right, the managing director of Preservation Hall, the one and only Michael Martinovich. Nice. General manager of the legendary independent music venue Tipitina's Brian Tank Greenberg. Sticking with the independent venue world, a man who's taking them over one venue at a time. Owner of Gasa Gasa. I don't know the actual business terms of your other venues when it comes to, I guess, owner of No Dice, owner of NOLA Domino, and more in the mix. Give it up for Micah Burns. And our panelist in residency, who's only here for 12 hours but has already had charbroiled oysters and an Abita beer, is our friend Jason Oshwald is the last name?
Nailed it. Perfect.
Nice. Well, I thought you were going to tell me I ruined it. But from OBX Live and Big Spring, right?
Correct.
Awesome. Give it up.
Independent promoter.
Yep.
Keeping the end thing going.
So I think, with this, when you talk about the economics of the industry of venues, touring, musician life, I'd like to get each of you from your vantage point a bit of a state of the union. And, it'd be interesting, especially with Jason here, we somewhat live in our own little bubble of New Orleans. Of course, Mike with Preservation Hall has plenty of touring and international work that happens, and so he sees it from different perspectives also. But where are you in your business right now? In general, you don't have to go into open your books or anything like that, but your thoughts on the state of the music industry here in New Orleans, and maybe give some perspective what you see when you guys are on the road.
Well, that's a pretty broad question.
Well, I'll try to tackle it from, as I'm sitting here on behalf of Ben Jaffe. I would say that we view ourselves as a cultural institution. We serve kind of a dual purpose insofar as there are about 60 musicians that perform at Preservation Hall and about 12 that sort of rotate in and out of touring. And so there is a little bit of a mission when it comes to both serving the tourists and the patrons, as we call our attendees at shows at Preservation Hall, with an authentic experience of traditional New Orleans music, and then the touring band who serve as ambassadors for the culture and the city of New Orleans. We do a lot of work with the Preservation Hall Foundation. So while we're on the road, we do a lot of outreach with schools and other cultural institutions. We do a lot of collaboration with international artists, especially from the diaspora that helped create jazz. As far as the state of the state is concerned, from where we sit, things have come back for us, knock wood, pretty well since the pandemic. And we owe that a lot to, the way that our city has bounced back and the spirit of the city. Certainly the musicians have been participating with vigor and enthusiasm. And I'll say that, Ben, right when the pandemic kicked in, his first reaction was, what are we going to do to make sure that the musicians that are playing at Preservation Hall can return to Preservation Hall healthy? So with that, I think that the spirit that customers and patrons receive from the musicians, it's felt good. I mean, summer is hard. It's hard for all of us sitting here at the dais with tourism being down as dramatically as it is. I think that this summer was a little less tenuous than last summer, especially vis-a-vis the weather. But we're thankful that things seem to be, ticking along rather nicely. We've been able to maintain what we feel are fair and reasonable ticket prices. And the musicians are happy, and things are reasonably good.
And I think, when people come through the door at Preservation Hall, they're getting an immersive experience. And, that is, and we can come back to this, but I think that authenticity, obviously the legend, the history of the hall, it is a place that people seek to go out to. And you also, as a band and a organization, go and take it to the people. And
That's right.
That goes a long way. Yeah,
I would say that, contrary to popular belief, people don't go to Preservation Hall to hear the Saints Go Marching In or only the Saints Go Marching In. When a lot of our staff, will give tours to patrons, and when time allows, tell people about the history of the Jaffe family, how they discovered New Orleans themselves, what the impetus was to create the institution at the time that the cultural institution was created. And even for the people that don't know it going into it, they leave having felt as though they were transported someplace else.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Tank, besides being the most outstanding roaster on planet Earth, I will just say as a little side note, next year when we do our kickoff roast of NOLA by NOLA at Tipitina's, where we roast a New Orleans musician, you need to be there, if only to see Tank do the roast. It is legendary.
I appreciate that.
It's amazing.
And I go after anyone in the room. Too.
Yes.
Or not in the room.
Some of the people in the room are his bosses at Tipitina's. The first year we did this, it was Stanton Moore, and it was Tank's boss, and he was the first roaster. We've moved him to the end, but it is an absolute spectacular ending. But besides your roasting career, with Tipitina's, how you guys, independent, venue, large independent venue, owned by Galactic, so you see all sides of the business through their experience, your experience. What are your thoughts these days?
As far as like a kind of like you said, a blanket State of the Union, I guess. It's tricky. We're lucky in a lot of ways. We're celebrating 48 or coming up on 49 years in January, so we have just a lot of history in the city. So that kind of does us a lot of favors, and sometimes it hurts you too. Like, we've been around for a long time, so we have a good reputation. People for decades, for literally generations now, have experienced a lot of fun times at Tipitina's. So it's almost like not like carrying the torch for what things used to be, but there is something unique that happens that I hear from people every once in a while, and I like to encourage it because I think it's fun. When people walk in the doors at Tipitina's, even if you've never been there before, you feel like you've been there before. Like, there's something specific about that. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just there's wood. I don't know. There's something, but it's getting tougher all the time, and I don't know if this year is any different from any other years in a lot of ways. That things just seem to be incrementally always getting more difficult. And in this town, I don't know. I mean, everyone that lives here knows that this is a tough place to live. Like, as much fun as it is, it's got, all the pros have just as many cons as well. I would say something I was talking with Micah about right before this all started was just because Goss is right there on Ferret near the universities, and I was commenting on saying how I'm not seeing a lot of younger bands. Like, where's the college age kids, like the 18, 19, 20-year-olds trying to start up a band? It's not just rock bands or anything like that, but just young musicians in general. I think there might have been somewhat of a paradigm shift that, this is the age of information, and now musicians are hip to the fact that, I got to learn more about this business than just being able to play the trumpet or just playing my thing. I got to learn this. So now the music school has expanded into a music business school as well. More people are getting into the business of art than ever before, and music is something that used to be enjoyed as art that is ultimately now just being consumed as any other product. It doesn't have the same value it has, in my personal opinion, from what I'm seeing. I'm not saying that it doesn't have value. It's just like anything else. Like, we scroll on our phones, it's just the modern channel surfing now. It's like, click next channel, next channel, next channel. There's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it, and I think we can all say that, the best, greatest musicians out there are not the best-selling musicians out there. Like, we can go to any number of the dozens of places that are open every night of the week in this town and see someone who is a world-class musician playing in front of 13 people.
Yeah.
Like, that's bananas. And then to think that someone just has some dog shit that they put together that has a catchy little hook that got big on TikTok, and they're selling out 1,000-person rooms or something.
Yeah, probably powered by AI. So
exactly.
It's the worst of the worst.
But all that is to say, Tipitina's on its own, like I was saying before, like, we have a good history, so we try and just maintain that. I am not one of the people who thinks that there is nothing sacred in this world. There are things that you do just because it's the right thing to do. But whenever we end up having a Taylor Swift dance party at Tipitina's, every once in a while you get a comment like, "Oh, I don't want to come to Tipitina's to see that." It's like, you didn't come to Tipitina's to see George Porter, or you didn't like. We're not going to do something for you every night just because it's not something you would have seen there 40 years ago or whatever. So the trickiest part is trying to adapt to whatever, not necessarily the flavor of the month is, but just kind of keeping a baseline on what people are doing. And alcohol consumption is down, and that is the bread and butter for our industry very often. So it's just getting trickier. It's harder to turn a buck, And I remember talking with Hank, who owns the Maple Leaf, and he says, if you want to earn $1, you got to ring $3. And I think it's coming up closer to, if you want to earn $1, you got to ring $4.
Yeah.
So
I can speak from my experience with festivals. It is, it is becoming unbelievably difficult just to open the doors because of the pricing of security, the
even just insurance in Louisiana.
The insurance, you almost have to take the risk of, do I need insurance? Is a question a lot of promoters are asking before going in, looking at the weather, and it's either feel good about the weather or spend $500,000 that gets you nothing very easily and quickly. Micah, you are a man who left the music industry. You became a plant man on film sets, and then you decided to come back and get your venue back, Gassa Gassa, and open it in the summer. What's your state these days?
It does sound like a few questionable decisions after when it's spelled out to me like that. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't exactly in my bingo card to get as involved in the music industry as I did in the last year, but very happy about it, even though there are new challenges taken from leaving in 2019 and then coming back this year. Everything's different. Like what you pay people is different. The kind of people that are coming out to shows, the lack of, your standard bands coming out of Loyola specifically is different. And people are just drinking less in general. So I still think, I feel like I kind of missed some of the COVID aftermath of, routing being totally messed up. And so I'm feeling pretty good right now, even though it's
All right.
challenging.
That's great.
Thank
you for joining us. This has been fantastic. We are moving on.
I think it's really, as far as the reason I feel confident is staffing. It's like I'm not getting younger or cooler, and so trying to make sure that you're attached to people who are still young and cool is very important. And because of Loyola being right down the street, we have a lot of kids just coming in and out of the club. We also just started a partnership with Loyola. It's given us, 12 kids in their 20s to kind of throw ideas off of and tell us what's coming up and what's cool and what is on campus that's exciting. And so, I think just staying as young as possible by way of hiring people who are, cooler and younger than yourself has really given us kind of a shape and a direction to go in. And so far, so good. Summer was terrible, but it always is. It wasn't surprising to me. I didn't lose hope. And we honestly, paid our bills and made it through. So
All right.
Things are good.
I will tell you, I came through there. I think I'd left Tipitina's one Sunday night recently, and I was like, I wonder if Mike is around. I can extend this night. And you weren't. But what I thought was really, really cool was like there were kids on the street. Like there was an energy happening outside of Agasa that was like, I ran into my intern who I didn't know who was going to be there, So that was cool. You've
Done a great job with that outdoor patio.
Oh, thank you very much. We're very proud of that.
So Jason, before we run out of time, thanks for flying in. This was great. So you've heard some New Orleans perspective, and I'm curious of like maybe tell a little bit about your company and what you're doing and how you see things at this moment.
Sure. So we promote about 250 shows a year from Peoria, Rockford, kind of all the way down the Mississippi, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, and then across Mobile to Jacksonville, Florida, up through the Carolinas and into Richmond, and then kind of stop at that Richmond line. So our bread and butter is performing arts center shows. The sort of being in Nashville, the Travis Tritts, Gary Allens of the world, that kind of stuff. But my sort of byline is when people ask what kind of shows we do is everything from Judas Priest to Peppa Pig. So it's kind of, we hit it all. One of the things that we saw kind of coming out of COVID was everybody's touring got off cycle. It used to be a little bit more of a balance of they'd go into album cycle, tour cycle, and there was more of a flow to it, and there was room for everybody, and I feel like folks were making money. Everybody went out. It was the salad days. There was this pent-up demand for live music. Everybody's making money. We're starting to see that kind of crest a little bit. And a lot of agents and managers are telling us that their artists are going into album cycle next year, and they may not tour as much. They used to do 100 dates. They may do 50 or 40. So we're having to pivot a little bit. Outside of music, we're doing a lot more podcasts and like experiential kind of things. We have something in 2 days at the Civic that's a haunted objects podcast for like, I don't know, they bring in like these relics and all this stuff, but it's kind of like this spooky voodoo Halloween thing, but it's selling tickets. So like we're having to kind of figure out what works.
And are they doing 2 shows?
Only one.
Because it's amazing how many podcasts come in playing, whether it's the Civic, the Joy, the Fillmore, House of Blues. I think Tipitina's has had them. But with those venues in particular, I'm always amazed, and it's an amazing statement. They come in and they're doing 2 shows, which is wild when you think about it.
And I mean, and there's some that we're doing where there's artists we do all the time I'm not cool anymore either that I've never heard of, and then they sell out, but these podcasts that I've never heard of, and it's a $30,000 guarantee for this person, and I don't however many tens of millions of followers they got on their podcast, and they're selling and they're making money, and it's great. And I talk to friends about it, and I kind of quiz people like, hey, have you heard of this podcast? And they're like, no, but that's all I listen to. I barely listen to music anymore. I always listen to podcasts. Like, who is it? I'm going to put it in my feed. I'll check it out. So I don't know. I feel like we're having to get a little creative as people are going into their album cycles, and there's just not as much product for us in our wheelhouse in the PAC world. So that's sort of one of the changes that we've been adapting to.
Amazing. That's great. With that, it brings up the pivot, right? Which I think everybody has had to do. I'd be curious, open conversation of the pivots you've had to make and which ones maybe you never thought in a million years you would do. I think nothing is sacred is kind of an interesting point for Tipitinas, because I think at one point there were some things that you would never try at Tipitinas.
I suppose so. As far as like pivoting, I think our biggest pivot was at the end of 2018 when Galactic bought the venue, because we went from eternal struggle into everything seems a little bit better now. For anyone who doesn't know a little bit of the history about Tipitinas, our previous owner had some issues, namely financial and federal investigative ones. But the one good thing he did do at the end was sell it to Galactic and not just to the person that was going to make the biggest offer. And Galactic, in that same note, realized that, I hate to say that nothing is sacred, because a lot of people do treat it like it's sacred. We still are obviously very defensive of Tipitinas. People want to come in, we'd love to do this, this, and this. And we're just like, no, like it's ours or whatever. Yeah, I mean, some interesting things that we did, like the record club has been pretty popular. It's not a huge moneymaker necessarily, but it's just something to keep people engaged. It's just a little bit deeper level of fan interaction in a way, even though most of the musicians, like most of the music that's being released is from musicians who have passed away. So there's a lot of re-releases and never before heard live things and whatever else. But for us, the big pivot was leaning into literally the history of the club as far as making it an enjoyable place to see shows. Again, our previous owner was very hard to squeeze money out of whenever we need something, even if it was something like, hey, we need to pay the merch company so we can get more shirts. And it's like, oh, do we need to pay them? It's like, yeah, man, we make money off this stuff. Like, if you pay them, they will give us more shirts. We sell them, then we give them more money, and so the cycle continues. Or like, hey, our beer coolers are broken, and they would just send someone to kind of fix it a little bit. It's like, dude, this is where we're making our money. This is where you invest it. And we finally got owners that were like, luckily, they had a job. They were successful musicians, so they don't need the money from Tipitinas to keep the lights on at their house or anything else, or in this case, fund the other losses from their other companies. Or
they just put a Galactic show up and play at home.
Right. It's funny because there is that story. I don't know if anyone knew this, but before they bought the place, before it was public or anything like that, they were trying to convince a bank to give them a loan. They were like, we're going to give how many millions of dollars to a funk band? What? Like, because you want to buy the bar you like? No, I don't think so. But there was we ended up pulling together something real last minute. There was I forgot the name of the storm, but there was a hurricane that had hit, I think, North Carolina, and we put together a benefit real quick. And they're like, hey, we're gonna just take the revenue and push it on. And it was Galactic and Soul Rebels. They took like a couple $1,000s a piece, but in 10 days notice, we put together like a 600-person show at Tipitina's, and they invited them to come to the show, and they were like, look what we did in less than 2 weeks notice. Like, this is the sort of thing that can happen at this club. This is a real investment. And sure enough, that was one of the things that helped convince the bank to give them the loan. I don't think a whole lot of people know that story.
That's a great story.
Especially since I had to pretend like I didn't know that they were going to be buying the club.
And you signed an NDA about that story, probably. So there's that.
I mean,
too.
it's not like a dirty story or anything like that. It's just an interesting one.
See you in court.
Yeah, no.
Exactly.
There's a job offer out there for general manager.
Yeah. But like I was saying, like, they're musicians. It was important to them that Tipitina stay strong. They know that there's going to be a day down the road when they just can't own it anymore. They just decide that it's too much of a headache to not be making any money on themselves, and they will pass it along to hopefully someone else who believes in the club as well. but they just invested into the club, and that was our biggest. It's not even a pivot. It's literally just doing what you should do as a good business practice, investing in your business.
This is one of those things that, in all honesty, if they had not bought it, keeping other possible venue options out off the table of this conversation, it could have become a self-storage building. You know, it could have just been
condos or
the
something.
condos, like, you live in the old Tipitinas, you know, like hell, I'll buy that, you know.
I have to say that, you know, in the 15 years that I've worked with Ben, you know, I started with Ben as the manager for the touring Preservation Hall Jazz Band and the recording band. And, you know, getting to know him and the history of his family, you know, to what you were saying about creating the story and telling the story of Tipitinas in practice, you know, like Ben's father did that on a nightly basis, performing with the band. We have the blessing and the benefit of Ben teaching our staff the story, and the customers learn it as they enter into the venue, and also the band leaders themselves will give a piece of history about a song or the venue, and it's part of the program, but it's not tourism. It's an actual authentic thing. With Tipitinas, you know, starting the record club with Tipitinas, Preservation Hall started Preservation Hall Recordings, and to your point, it was more about perpetuating the culture and the dignity of the history than it was about trying to make a lot of money. I mean, there's a lot of cultural kinsmanship between what Ben does with Preservation Hall and what you and Galactic do with Tipitinas. For the interest of full disclosure, Ben puts out a couple of records a year with the Tipitinas Record Club, and Preservation Hall Jazz Band will play Tipitinas. Nobody's making a mint, but we're doing it because out of love and out of a shared, you know, passion for the culture, and that's real.
All right, Jason, what do you got?
I guess a little bit different for us, being mostly on the promoter side, because we're relying on the venue so much for those relationships and those things that sort of intangibles or whatever. I mean, what we struggle with going into a lot of these is just the rising cost of what the artist guarantees are. And it's just driving ticket prices further and further up. And so then we got to add bumps and fees and all this other stuff on top of it. So the all-in ticketing thing's helping us a little bit with that. But where we struggle with it is it becomes such a squeeze on the patrons that it's like, God, like, before I even step foot in here, I'm $100 out of pocket, even though the face value was $60. And so we're trying to create these experiences and these cool things for them to come and have a better time at the show. But I always just feel like it's all just trying to squeeze one more nickel out of this person coming into the room because we got to hit this guarantee. But, you know, I don't know. I'm not a business manager for these artists. So I don't know what the plane cost and gas and food and hotels and like everything that's going up. So I don't know. It's this weird kind of cycle I feel like we're in the past maybe 9 months or so that all that stuff keeps coming up. So like, I see the venue wants to do get in early for an extra $10. Come to this lounge and get, you know, free drinks for an extra $50. And there's all just add-on after add-on after add-on.
To that point, I don't know, I would assume most of you on this panel saw this, maybe some of you out there. Michael Rapino, CEO of Live Nation, this week in his annual call made the statement that he does not think shows are expensive enough, that they should be more expensive because of what it costs to do the show, and when compared to other, you know, entertainment, the value leaves more room for a higher price, which
Right.
I think is interesting because there's a trickle down also, and also like for those who have artists that are going on the road, you know, what happens to that, and if, you know, open discussion on this too of First Instinct, if you didn't see or hear it, I think it was yesterday or the day before.
Well, it's funny because last night I dealt with a 19-year-old punk chick that was yelling at me that my ticket was $12 and that the Stella we sold her was $6, and I was just like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's like
Yeah. What are you gonna do about that?
Yeah. I don't know, but it was just interesting to see like that's where the barometer was for that kind of, you know, fan was like, you know,
What were her expectations, and where was she
I
from?
think,
and
yeah, she was from here, but she, you know, it seemed like she thought 12 was just, you know, it was like it should be 10, and you guys are trying to rip us off by charging 12. And it was like, there are 6 bands on this bill. Like, it's like, I don't know.
And they're all really
what you
loud.
want.
They're each making $100.
That's right. Exactly.
Maybe.
They're stoked about it. Like,
Maybe, right?
So, you know, rising ticket prices. Although I have noticed that we've been able to sell $20, $25 tickets more than, you know, you were talking about pivoting. Like, since I've started back in the game, every day has been a pivot. You know? It's like every single day I'm like, this thing that I assumed is totally wrong, and I have to, you know, rethink this stuff. And so, but I've, you know, ticket prices is, you know, more expensive ticket prices seems hard to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I don't know if that will be a thing on the local level,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
scary to think that's the thing on when you start talking about the national level stadiums and arenas and amphitheaters, just flat out saying we're going to just charge more when it seems like it's at a certain level
Where does
already.
it end?
I don't know. I don't know.
So much.
I mean, I think it. Excuse me. It's a little crazy to think that ticket prices are not expensive enough, or however he put that.
Yeah.
Because something that I'm noticing, again, like we mentioned with like lower drink consumption, whatever else, people are spending more on Ubers going to and from the show than they are at the show.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of mind-boggling to me as well. And it's never been safer to get extremely drunk all the time because you have an Uber. You can just press a button on your phone and you have a safe ride home. You should be getting shit-faced when you're at the show if you're not driving. There's never been
That
a
seems
better
like a good
excuse.
slogan for
Yeah.
Tipitinas.
Yeah, we'll put it on the next shirt. But I mean, the costs of touring are getting so crazy for the bands as well. I mean, there was a time when like, oh no, we can do a bus because getting 6 hotel rooms and whatever else and the travel and whatever, like flying and staying in hotels used to be crazy, and they would pile into a van, and then the buses became too expensive or whatever else. Like I don't tour, so they live like animals anyways, and it's definitely not getting any cheaper to do that.
Well, especially in the last couple of years, buses were hard to come by.
Yeah,
Prices
exactly.
For buses
Scarcity.
ballooned.
Yeah.
And then fuel prices aren't low.
Totally.
I don't know if it's still this way, but I think coming out of the pandemic, like you guys were with the hall, the band, you know, and I think I heard this from other artists too. It was more like starting to fly to one place, get in vans from there, spend 3 days straight, and come back versus
Absolutely.
being out on the road and almost take on what was kind of the legendary Nashville model of touring for the week and then coming back after a short time on the road.
For us, ideally, it's lovely to go to a city and park there for 3 or 4 days and come home for a few days, then go back out. We do that annually in San Francisco. There's a couple of other markets that we're going to be practicing that in next year. But for Preservation Hall, the gentlemen in the group and range in age from upper 20s to lower 80s. So going on the road for 4 straight weeks is a little bit rugged. So we try to be a little bit more strategic for economic and just quality of living circumstances. But we're mindful of the prices that we charge, and we're also mindful of the prices that we can charge. We're not Taylor Swift, but trying to make it sustainable. And like I said, to be ambassadors for the venue and keep the culture alive in other cities is the goal.
Yeah.
I mean, they're creating a very unique experience. Like, there's not a whole lot of bands out there doing anything at all like what Pres Hall Touring Act does, for sure. But people's spending habits are changing. Like we were talking about, something else that's changed. This is going back. Sorry, I'm going to take over this for a second. There's one thing about New Orleans that I do like to point out, for the mere fact that it's changed in the mere fact that there's no more mystery left to this city. I think that has been the biggest hang-up I have with modern New Orleans. There was a time when you would go out to, a bar and you meet a stranger and like, hey, we're going to go over to the so-and-so's, or we're going to go to Vaughn's or something like that to see whoever. It's like, oh, I've never heard of it. Well, I'll join in. And you would just go to a bar in a strange neighborhood without a cell phone, didn't know how much it would cost. You just kind of figured it out when you were there. There's not that kind of mystery or mystique to this city. There's nothing that is in the shadows anymore. We are totally connected at all times in our pockets and connected to the whole world. and there are no more secrets left, meaning that it's not as adventurous to hang out in this city as it used to be. And maybe that's just me getting older or whatever else, but when's the last time anyone in this room went to a restaurant without looking at the menu before you went? Can you remember the last time you did that?
But that's not a New Orleans issue.
Exactly,
right?
but that's become a New Orleans thing. There used to just be this, oh, I'll go to New Orleans and have fun. Like, I would meet tourists that would just appear at Tipitina's and be like, what is this place? Now, you plan on going to the Hall. You plan on going to Tipitina's. You plan on hitting Ferret or Frenchman or whatever else because they already have an idea what they're going to experience. But that's coming with smarter customers in some way. They're more mindful of where their money goes. And if they can't look on their phone and know they're going to like it before they go, they're not going to check it out. Like some people might want to come to Tipitina's, but they don't know what the band is, so they're not going to go. Or they see the band, oh, it's a brass band. I don't like brass music, so they're not going to come, or whatever else.
Or they just hate the color yellow.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's it there.
I don't know.
I have to somewhat disagree with you, though. I think...
As the guy that just booked 360 concerts.
And I'm going to venues I've never been to before.
Yeah. And forgetting who he booked.
There's
It's
a whole lot
a new
of that.
surprise. It's a new surprise every night.
I wake up the next morning, I'm like, okay, I think I saw Tank. You know, there's so much like uncomfortable truth to everything you just said. But like, to this point, one of the venues that we brought on last year that was really wanting to be part of NOLA by NOLA was Club Switch. Does anybody know Club Switch in the Quarter? Yes? There you go. Nicely done. And so the other night I went there for the first time, and it was drag karaoke, and it was unbelievable. It was so great. The community that was there that was so supportive. I got the same vibe when I went to Domino on what was the most unique open mic I've ever seen, because it wasn't a traditional open mic. It was like poetry and all kinds of just across the entire spectrum. I think the biggest problem is not that there's no mystery. We're lazy. You need to go find things you've never seen before. This town is full of neighborhood bars that are not on the top 5 places to go in New Orleans. So that's
not for nothing. I'm 56 and about to be an empty nester. And so for the last 20 years of my life, my whole life was programmed around work, which thankfully is in the music business. So therefore I was exposed to culture. But now I'm like, now that my wife and I have time, we're like, let's go out and do stuff. And back in my 20s, in the 90s, I do remember going to the 5 Spot in Philadelphia and just going to the 5 Spot on a Saturday night. I'm like, holy shit, that's the Roots on stage, or Jill Scott's about to go on. I had no idea. Or spoken word, or just something happening. And I do agree with you that stuff still happens. Yeah. It just hasn't been on my radar for, out of necessity.
I'm sorry, I 100% agree with everything you're saying. I'm not trying to contradict that. I think probably what I'm thinking is that this city is so dependent on the tourists that are looking for that mystery and adventure.
Fair enough.
They look for New Orleans music, and they're just going to see the first 5 things that come up. Like, where's the best place to hide a body on the second page of Google or whatever it is. So they're not even going to keep looking.
Wait, actually, Micah knows the answer to that.
Well, gotta go out the east, but it's okay. One of the things I was gonna, it's like, I think the culture in general is more like needing to know what they're about to do to commit to doing anything. I mean, all my marketing people are like, we gotta get some influences, on, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, I don't even know how to find an influencer, but in general, I do think mystery is just not something people are as looking for as they once were.
Well, and it's easy sorry, man. Yeah. Keep going.
Well, no, I remember when I met you,
what a mystery.
Yeah. Well, just New Orleans was an exciting, mysterious place. I didn't know where I was going to go or end up, and it was amazing, But now I'm old, sober, and have a 9-year-old, and so I'm just not as...
This is becoming a meeting.
Yeah.
For the record, Micah used to throw house parties in houses that he didn't own.
This is true.
So he has come a long way, and we're very proud of you, Micah.
Well, in general, I'm just saying, like, mystery is a bit lost on the current, kind of younger generation.
That's what I was going to say. I think, like, the college age, early early adulthood, I mean, I'm not gonna go on a tangent like this, but there's just not like.
Why stop now?
Yeah, totally, totally. And I don't mean to be the youth is coddled. No. I mean, like, society has raised us to be a little more wise, and you don't want to do things unless you kind of have an idea what you're in for.
You're 1,000. I mean, I have an 18-year-old that's way into music, and he would ask me for tickets to see shows at the Civic or the Fillmore for artists that were already popular enough.
Yeah.
And I would want to take him to Toulouse Theater or Tips to see something that was not yet broken. And he'd be like, I'm not interested in that. Mm-hmm. I'm like, dude, I'm in the music business. Like, I'm cool.
Totally.
Like, come see this goddamn show.
Here's,
and he wants to wait until it's actually broken through a little bit, as though it's somehow a validation.
And also, who are you to tell him, right? Like, that's the lamest thing ever.
Right.
Benji, who owns a few bars in town, namely Santos and the Saint and Holy Diver. I was at Santos last Sunday. Suplex was playing, and it was great. It was awesome. And last year during NOLA by NOLA, Supergroup, which was Benji's kind of legendary
Fucking awesome.
3-chord band with his brother, they played last year at Santos's bar, NOLA by NOLA. It was the first time they'd played in many, many years. It was a late afternoon set.
I was there.
And he brought his kids, and they were just like, this is lame. He thought it was going to be so cool. He's like, you're going to stand next to the stage, and I'm going to play. And it's like, Dad, you look stupid. You know? Why are you jumping? These are legitimately everything he was telling me about his conversation with his kids. I may have interrupted you, but
It's your
I guess you're right about that. This is my panel. Real quickly, does anybody have any questions? We have really a cross section of some of the, every level of venue and music industry history in the room. I know this guy right here. He's the Bagel Man. He owner of the Howlin' Wolf. Howie, what's your question?
Yentef.
So I've actually had this conversation with the three of y'all more than a few times. So my name's Howie Kaplan. I'm, in addition to the Howlin' Wolf, I'm managing the Reverse Brass Band. I don't even need this. I've got a loud enough voice. But I kind of had a question more for you. I'm also the precinct captain for the National Independent Venue Association that got the Save Our Stages bill passed. 16.
Thank you for keeping the lights
Yeah,
on
thank
my
you.
family's head.
Well, I'm not doing that for the applause, but I am doing it because I'm now the vice chair of advocacy. So we had a bill, a ticketing bill in the state Senate that didn't get out of committee. We had federal legislation. If you saw Kid Rock in the White House, that was us. We call him Bob. He makes us call him Bob. It's really, really weird. And then, of course, the reason why Mike Rapino is worried about money is because they just got sued by the Department of Justice and the FTC for violating the BOTS Act by actively coordinating with the secondary ticketing market. I'm sorry, scalpers. I hate calling it secondary ticketing. And you guys can answer this as well, but we've kind of all had this conversation. I'm curious on your shows what you're seeing in terms of the scalpers and how they're impacting. And I know the numbers behind this. I know that the State of Live that we just released, that independent venues are worth more to the GDP than gambling, the beer industry, the airline industry. So I'm curious how that's affected you, because we're continuing to have conversations. You know, we have two senators that are one with a D and one with an R that really want to go after these people.
Yep.
Tell me what more I need to know to give them that.
I was in Milwaukee when they released that study. It was awesome. They were up on stage, and I was like, it was fantastic. Like, sending it out to all the folks that I'm working with, and it's a mess. It's a big fucking mess. We had a show this summer at an outdoor amphitheater in the Outer Banks. VIP 1, VIP 2, Pit, GA, a bunch of different price levels. So got hit with chargebacks, which I think is probably for us even more of an issue than the bots. So
Can you explain that to the...
So the scalpers are, they'll buy these tickets, they'll try and sell them on the secondary, and if they don't sell them, they go back to Amex, Visa, MasterCard, whoever it is, and they say, I didn't attend, whatever, I want to charge it back, I want my money back. And I mean, the ticketing company's hands are kind of tied to a certain extent. So we settled with the band, they were in percentages, we settled with the VIP, but the chargebacks can happen within like a 90-day period of when the event happened. And so we were out tens of thousands of dollars. So that's something where I feel like at a federal level, they need to somehow codify how these chargebacks work. Because right now we're having to talk to a lot of the bands and say, look, we can't settle with you for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, but they've got expenses, they've got bills, they've got to pay along the way. So who eats it? Like
We have that problem with festivals where somebody can, after the festival, they'll say it rained and Saturday, well, it rained for 2 hours. But like the chargeback will happen because the credit card company is going to let it happen. Those chargebacks are terrible, so.
And I'll follow that up to kind of answer your question. So we are working with the credit card companies to try to figure out ways around that. But now what we need to do is say that a ticket is a license between you and between the artist, the venue, and the consumer.
Yes.
And so once you do that, you can set terms. In the state of Louisiana, you have freedom of contract. You can do that. And we're going to be having more conversations, all three of us. But it's a very, very different thing. And when you're talking about these chargebacks, note that yesterday SeatGeek changed their terms of service to mean that you have to go through mediation. We're trying to outline whether or not they're allowed to do that and how that would affect their issues. with the credit
Interesting.
card companies. So definitely keep, if you get a chance to go to the Indianapolis thing in a couple of weeks, there's a lot going on in this area. And I'm telling you, I know, and even talking to Tipitina's, I know your first weekend of Jazz Fest, your no-show rate was what, 20%?
Between 15 and 20 for a lot of them, yeah.
That's insane. And a lot of that is money that's coming, that the scalpers are manipulating the market. So when we're talking about all these dollars, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to take over.
Do you see a lot of chargebacks?
But I'm more concerned just because you're
Yeah, I
dealing
mean-
in all these different markets. For me, I understand it, and we all have something where it comes to the road. But I'm more curious about you because you're in all these different markets, and when you talk about chargebacks and the scalpers, I'm more.
And it sort of our industry standard was 8 to 10% no shows for decades, and now 15 to 20 is the
Yeah.
standard because of whatever.
And then
inventory's
right after the
getting bought.
pandemic, it was like a 30% drop sometimes.
And especially in venues like if we're sharing an ancillaries, like that really affects us. It's not just the venue, and this is where it kind of gets into a sticky situation sometimes as a promoter. If we're not sharing in those ancillaries and we know that the bots, hit it one day and we sold 600 tickets when every other day was 10. It's like, well, what do you want me to do? This is, as a promoter, this is money in my pocket right now. And the venue's like, half of these people aren't going to show up. I got to sell beer. It's like, I don't know what, and so you got to like work it out, but it sucks. It sucks.
What do you mean that, isn't once a ticket's purchased is purchased?
You can still
Not
just tell your
really.
credit card that's a fraudulent charge after 60 to 90 or whatever the term. Like Visa can basically, if you say, I didn't do that charge, I want my money back, they will just basically send you a letter saying,
No, I bought a ticket with Ticketmaster, and it was a secondary ticket for Paul McCartney coming up, and so I paid willingly $190. Then when I looked at my emails for my receipts, I had two receipts. I had a receipt for the $190 and $151 receipt for parking that I never authorized, never ever ever.
So you didn't go through Ticketmaster. You went through
SeatGeek.
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly the problem.
I can actually help you with that.
Okay.
All right, so,
Did not even click at anything.
yeah, I think that's a different thing that I said, though.
But
Yeah.
it's as a consumer.
No, but they can still just say, like, you can right now just look at a charge that you made on your credit card sometime in the past week and tell you.
My card wouldn't give it back to me, so they don't all do that.
Yeah, I'm not saying they all do that. I'm just saying a lot of them do
Well,
that.
I wish-
All right, well, then you should talk to my ticket web rep and tell them to stop taking my. I mean, what are we talking about here?
All right, I want you, after the show, go talk to Howie. He will represent you.
All right.
Customer support.
Yes.
So I moved here from LA and I went to a lot of Hollywood Bowl concerts. They put tickets on sale. You know how it is at 10 o'clock. The tickets are now on sale. Within an hour, it's sold out. Yet in less than 24 hours, there's all these tickets on the secondary market. How does that happen?
All the things that we said.
Robots.
Robots.
Secondary ticketing bots.
Why isn't I mean,
It's evil.
That's what he's saying. It should be illegal.
No, the point of this.
We agree with you. I'm not even up there and I'm agreeing with you.
All right,
We're
so
in the same boat. We're rowing in the same direction.
So
it's a tidal wave.
next year at NOLA by NOLA Talks, we're going to do a 2-hour panel on bots, and it'll all be produced by AI and Howie. So
There's no regulation in
Yeah.
that market necessarily. That's what he's saying.
so
Yeah.
I want to help. So
all right.
All right, go to
Nice.
the venue's website. Stop using fucking SeatGeek. and Stop using StubHub. Yeah.
believe me, no more. I see the light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, yes, sir.
I will just validate what you were saying. I work in a festival.
You want to be more specific?
But a nationally large festival. And the chargebacks are an interesting piece of business because, and now you're in this world of cashless, right? And so so beyond the whole concept of primary buyer, secondary buyer, transfer tickets on these SeatGeeks and so on and so forth, you now have the world of chargebacks is a real crusher. Interestingly enough, they have to pick and choose the credit card companies when they're just going to accept it, put the onus on you to prove that they were there. We have to cross-validate it with any other food purchase somebody might have made, or it's strictly a speculative bot type purchase. But that's sort of this new unknown and a real fiscal crusher. To your point about the take 60 days, we don't have to settle out with a band like a touring band, but you still have to settle out and you have to understand projections.
Yeah.
And to Tank's point, or what you guys referenced earlier, last year at Tipitina's, their increased rate of no-show. On the one hand, the venue sold the ticket per se, and they may not have seen the chargebacks, and they feel like, okay, well, we've scored the nut on ticket sales, but T-shirt revenue's down, F&B's down, the whole vibe is down, the band's in a room that doesn't feel full. Like, it's interesting. So that is kind of this new weird zone we're in on all levels of, from the small clubs, maybe not, it's a handful of gossa and I have 1,000.
Yeah, and when it comes to the actual budgeting and preparing for those chargebacks, it's almost like another contingency line that you have to put into it, because there's anything goes remotely sideways, it gives an excuse for that chargeback, and people will do it,
And
very
not-
quickly, or wait and hit you later with it, but you will get hit with it.
And not all artists in genres have the same percentage of chargebacks. So now we avoid some of those artists and genres because we
Name
know-
names. No, just kidding.
It's you can name the genre and the
Yeah.
demo, right? I think hyper popular, Paul McCartney is going to be an attractive artist for bots,
Yeah.
An indie rock band at Gaza Gaza, maybe not so much.
Well,
You know.
depends if it's over $10. So, and what the price of beer is.
I would say it's about 20% no shows though, which has kind of blown my mind.
That could be apathy.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's an element of that too. Like if we have a show that we announce way early, like 4 or 5 months out, instead of like your standard like 2.5 months, like 10 weeks, there are plenty of people that like buy a ticket and just plumb forget about it. Or plans change, and we do have the language that says, "Oh, no refunds" or whatever else once you purchase, and they're like, "Nah, well, I'll just
Yeah.
eat it." You know, that happens too sometimes.
We're pretty much out of time, but I want to make sure, does anybody else have a question? We'd love to grab them if you have them. Anybody? Yes.
What are y'all going to do about the decrease in alcohol sales?
We're starting a meth lab.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That was supposed to be a secret.
I want to start charging corking fees for people that bring in their vape pens.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Our THC seltzers move pretty well. I know that's not specifically the perfect alternative to someone who doesn't want alcohol to drink their weed. But yeah, I mean, that's just it. And part of it might even be, like he was saying, like raising the ticket price, unfortunately, to try and help offset some of the loss in revenue, you know? So that could be, it's not a real solution, but it's part of it sometimes. I don't know.
Are you hoping that the younger people drink more, or are we going for more of a
we're getting into sort of an ethical, like, I've been sober for 3 years and I don't feel bad about not drinking, but I love to see music. So sorry, Tank.
We have lots of non-alcoholic
And I do
options
buy
as
them.
well.
I buy them,
Yeah.
and especially the ones without sugar.
Yeah. that's
Wow, okay.
They like to use a phrase called stomach share, right? Because regardless, if you're not drinking alcohol, you're still having something to drink, right? And you can only put stomach share? Alcohol? Is it the weed drink? Is it wine? Is it seltzer? Is it water? Is it caffeinated water? Is it all those things, right?
I've never heard that term. That I think we're going to close on that. The term to remember is stomach share. I want you all to try to use it in a sentence this weekend and share that with your friends, okay? Let's give it up for this outstanding panel. Really appreciate everybody being here. We're going to take about a 10-minute break before our next panel, and during that period, you can lean into your stomach share with a complimentary Stella Artois, the official sponsor of NOLA by No Cover. Thank you very much. Thank you guys. Appreciate you all being here.
Thanks, Nick.
We are
I
live on the Jazz Museum's YouTube channel, which is very exciting. So hello, everyone outside, out there. We're going to do our second panel of NOLA by NOLA, a penny for your thoughts, financial wisdom and insight from today's live music industry. We have a great panel, and the person leading that panel who will do the introduction is one of my partners in NOLA by NOLA. We work very closely together to make this happen. And for those, again, keeping the stats, 360 shows over 11 days, 100 of them free. Thank you very much. Very nice. With that, Paul Peck from Fandium. Yay.
Thank you, Sig. Big shoes to fill after that last excellent panel. Hope everyone got to see it. Despite all the headlines about massive festivals, sold-out shows, huge tours, billion-dollar venues being built, the reality of making a living as an artist or a promoter or a venue or a festival, of course, is as precarious as it's ever been. So we have a great group of panelists here that have insights and wisdom and experiences, and these are all really good friends of mine and heroes of ours, so we're all really lucky to get to kind of hear their insights about how to overcome some of these challenges. So we have Reed Martin, founder of Mid-Citizen, Tom Russell, founder of Founders Entertainment, and we have Andrew from PSBM. I kind of condensed the introductions a little bit more than I wanted to. I'm going to unpack those a little bit. Reed is one of the top managers in the industry, incubating young talent. You work with Big Frida, you work with Tank and the Bangas, you work with Emily King. You manage a great team of artists and managers and balancing creative growth with the tough economics of building a business around music and touring. Tom was part of the group that launched Bonnaroo and Outside Lands, the founder of Governor's Ball Festival in New York, an iconic and still thriving event. He oversees everything with that event, from budgets, city relations, permitting, production, ops. A holistic perspective is what he brings to how festivals adapt and survive financially today. And Andrew is a business manager for PSBM, overseeing finances for artists and managers and making sure the budgets are sound, the operation is safe, the money's protected, the taxes get paid, and the financial foundation is solid. So all the important stuff that keeps the business rolling. So I want to ask each of you a question, starting with Reed. Reed, you and your team are guiding artists at every stage of their career, superstars, new talents and baby bands. And how do you make the economics of touring work for a developing artist? Do you see it as an investment? Is it like turning on the machine and getting things into gear? Like, what is your approach for artists? Because it's a partnership between you and the artist. What's your approach to artists that are just starting the climb?
That's a great question. I mean, in some ways, like, we don't manage any artists. Like, I mean, you said superstar. I appreciate that. I think it's, we've got a stable of artists that are indie artists that are career artists. But that said, we frequently will take on acts that, as you said, are starting that journey. It really depends if they have what their team looks like, what their touring ambitions are. But that said, all of our acts are live acts. We tend to not sign anybody without ever seeing them live. That's where our heart is as managers. There is an investment component to it, but you try and make the dollars and cents work from the jump. And oftentimes, if somebody's really starting out, and by starting out, I don't mean just starting. Like, if somebody's just starting, they're starting to build a buzz in their home market before they're really touring. But somebody that has started to get a national profile, maybe they've got a record deal, or they've got some fans. We're figuring out how we're helping them find friends in every city to crash. We are figuring out the cheapest way to safely get from city to city. And I think the biggest thing that we have to try and balance is making sure the live show is incredible while also affordable. And, at that point, you're just playing 200 cap clubs. And a lot of your early currency as to whether or not you're going to grow as an artist and gain fans is still how good is your live show. We now social media can act as rocket fuel for that, but most artists that don't catch some crazy viral moment still build things the way they built 30 years ago. And so anyway, long story short is we try and get creative. We manage Tank and the Bangas, who now have a successful touring career that's profitable for them. People pay their mortgages off of it and whatnot. Before they really broke, we would have them go on the road as an opener for Big Frida, but then be Frida's band. Because Frida's show had been just a DJ and dancers. And it elevated Frida's show by having a live band and DJ and dancers and whatnot. And the band members of Tank and the Bangas, who are the opener, they're getting, those band members might get an extra $75 or $100 a night or whatever. We're just going to pay the band a little bit extra money beyond, the $500 support budget or whatever, which is super meaningful to them, makes Frida's show better. And so we do look for those types of, that's one example, but we try and do that with artists, even if we don't manage the other person we're packaging up with. If it's a 200, 500 cap tour and you've got like a co-headline going out or whatnot, trying to figure out ways that you can share infrastructure with the other act, maybe even musicians, or one band's got a great light show, like figuring out ways you can elevate both sets and share resources. I've found, especially now when things are insanely expensive, and as you alluded to, like the club level is getting destroyed right now. So you gotta get creative on the costs while still trying to sometimes use that restriction to make the show even better.
Thank you. That's really smart and a really interesting piece of intel, and just the idea of being attentive to details and how can we make the show better but more affordable. And the idea of zeroing in on details is so important in all phases of this business, especially on the festival side. And Tom, you're producing and operating venues at scale. I know you started GovBall at one level and now it's one of the biggest in the country. What are like the economic pressures that you face between budgets and city relations and increasingly expensive talent? And what are like the challenges that you think about when you're contemplating how to make the numbers work for your business?
Well, where we are now is much different than where we started as an indie promoter. But when we first started out, it was really trying to make sure that our budget was actually going to be on budget. And we put together a very rough 15-page business plan, went to friends and family, and raised about $700,000. That wasn't enough money. The full risk on year one was about $3 million. But we raised enough to basically give the artists enough of a deposit so that they would come and play. And we were fully exposed at that point. Thankfully, the tickets sold, so we were in the black at the end of it. But it was incredibly difficult, and the budget kept going up because it was a first-year show, and that always happens. So it's just essential to really make sure that your budget is going to be as on point as possible. But I was at an advantage because I had spent all the years at Superfly, where I got to see all of the budgets for Bonnaroo, Vegoose, Outside Lands. I knew all the different line items. But we were very fortunate with our timing. And then you fast forward a few years, and our ticket sales over time have gone up and down, right? You're not always going to get the best crop of talent. And there are times when the ticket sales just aren't going to carry you to profitability. And that's when you have to really get into those details and figure out ways to cut that budget down in a way that's not going to sacrifice the show. So in 2022, for example, our ticket sales just weren't there at all. And we didn't know how to lower the budget substantially enough. So we explored a really crazy idea, which was to go from a 4-stage festival to a 3-stage festival, but keep the same amount of bands. That alone saved us over $500,000 and was the difference between being in the red and being in the black. We had to go to all of the artists and the managers and tell them what was happening, but everybody gets it, right? Everybody, on the artist side, they want the promoters to win because when the promoters win, the artists win. Some agents are nicer than others, but we were able to make it work. And then nowadays, and everybody says this, is just the prices just keep going up. The artist prices keep going up, production prices keep going up. And ticket prices keep going up. And that is the worst thing that I can do in my market of New York City when everything's just so price sensitive. There's so much stuff to do in New York. Everything is so expensive. And we experimented a couple years ago with actually lowering our prices on the GA end. And that resulted in our ticket sales increasing substantially the following year. Now, we kept the VIP prices as they were, and we actually added a different VIP level to kind of hit the really upper income folks. And in this age of income disparity, which is insane, you have these ultra wealthy people that you want to sell a ticket to, and then you have people that are making 30 grand a year and living in New York City, with 5 roommates in a 2-bedroom, and you want to make sure the tickets are as cheap as possible. So it's trying to hit all of those different groups and give them an experience that is attractive enough that they buy it, and make sure you don't price out folks, and then work with the artists and the managers to get creative if the ticket sales just aren't there.
Amazing answer. A lot to unpack there. I do have a follow-up question. Do you think that when you guys dropped the ticket price, which seemed to be a really healthy business decision, do you think that had the impact that you wanted to, because it was like now you hit the right price of the ticket for the event, or do you think that the fans, being savvy, reacted to like the counter to the expectation that the prices are going to go up every year, and then they saw it going down, and that became a positive for you?
It's hard to say with festivals because every lineup is different, right? You don't really know which talent lineup is going to sell you the most amount of tickets. But we started to compare our ticket prices to other shows and festivals and markets like Chicago or Palm Springs or Austin, and we were more expensive than Lollapalooza. We were more expensive than Austin City Limits, but we were in New York, so we thought like it's okay to be more expensive because New York is more expensive. But because New York has so much to do every single night of the week for food, music, entertainment, we really needed to make it a valuable ticket. So much so that when people saw the lineup and they saw the price, they said, this is a no-brainer. I have to buy this now. And what we find is that if you sell more tickets at the jump, you're going to sell way more tickets in that middle period because tickets sell tickets. People are talking about it, making plans. So as much as we can do to make the tickets cheaper on the front end, we just find, creates that snowball effect.
Did you advertise the fact that prices went down, or you just had the price?
We just lowered just lowered the price. Yeah. Because we didn't really like the, saying that for sponsors, right? We didn't want to point out an issue that we had, but we just realized that we were increasing prices, marginally each year. It just got to the point where in our very unique market, it just wasn't going to be sustainable for us.
Yeah.
Well, it's just an interesting takeaway, and it's just the idea that like when you come out with a price for a ticket, you can raise that price, but you can't go the opposite way, or at least you can't do it easily. So it's always smart to give yourself optionality and breathing room there.
And the big thing with festivals is that you have social media that's specific to the festival. So whatever you do is going to be seen and talked about on that social media page. Whereas if you're an artist announcing a tour and the ticket prices go up and down, it's very rare that the artist is going to be called out about moving ticket prices. So it's a different beast, and you got to be really careful to not jump the prices too quick.
I've gotten creative with that very issue in the past, and I don't care to talk about it. Andrew, you're working with artists that are like in the point of their career where they're hitting their stride and they're starting to be finances to manage. Mm-hmm. From a business management side, once the artists start generating real revenue, what are like the common mistakes that you see people making? What are the things you're looking out for excuse me, I shouldn't develop a stutter now. How do you help them sidestep these pitfalls and kind of build their business for the long run?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that we do once an artist starts making good money is liability protection. And that's honestly one of the most important things you can do from the get-go. What we do is we separate out revenue streams between touring, royalties, merch, publishing, brand deals, whatever it may be, to make sure that, in the off chance that if someone gets hurt at a concert, they can't come after you for your royalty income. Or if someone sues you for an E&O claim that you stole someone's melody, they can't come after your touring income. So liability protection is one of the most important things. Another thing is appropriate tax planning. We do year-end tax planning, and with that comes, deciding what type of entity structure you want as an artist, like versus an LLC versus an S corp versus a C corp. There's a lot of tax planning strategies that can save artists a ton of money. We also do like tax reduction applications. There's certain states that if you tour, such as California, Massachusetts, they want to withhold tax off the top of your guarantee. And we will submit a budget, and that reduces the amount of tax they have to withhold up front. But liability protection, I would say, is probably the most important thing that we do once an artist starts hitting their stride. Obviously, in terms of touring, some costs, like as you probably know, are really tough to change. Like transportation, like a hotel is a hotel. But in terms of production is where we really see some savings. Like if you work with a really good production manager, for instance, we're working on a client that has a Vegas residency coming up next year. And we just hired, we're spending a lot of money on this guy to be he's one of the top production managers in the game, but he's saving us the most amount of money from the bottom line by saying like, hey, we can use this video. I don't really know the specifics there, but he's really helping us out. But yeah, I would say the most important thing is liability protection.
Production manager that saves you money. I need to meet that person.
Yeah.
So when you talk about liability protection, are you talking about like the business entity? We're structuring a touring entity, we're structuring a recording entity,
Correct.
A publishing entity, or is there like an insurance component to this?
So there's both. The first thing is creating multiple business entities. So you create the business entity with a state, typically Delaware, because they have the most relaxed corporate laws. So you create separate business entities. So LLCs that you can end up electing S Corp status for each of them. But each of them have their separate, that you have to file a separate tax return. You have to file a separate set of books. You have to have separate insurance policies on them. For instance, the touring entity is going to have like your general liability insurance. They're going to have the business auto insurance. Whereas your royalty company, your publishing entity is going to have like your E&O insurance. But yeah, it's typically having them separated by buckets of revenue.
That's awesome, and it's great insight. All right, so we've heard a bit from each of you guys about each of your various corners of the business. I want to take a little bit of a wider view and think about the idea that despite all of the growth that we're seeing, we see it, the fans see it, it feels harder than ever to break into this industry and to survive in this industry, whether you're an artist or a manager or an independent promoter, trying to start something new. So it feels harder right now than it's ever been, and it's always been hard to go from 0 to 1. It's never gotten easier. It feels like it's gotten harder. So, of course, we have new-ish tools like social media platforms, and we can reach audience, and we know who we're targeting through marketing, and we have affinity audiences, and we have YouTube, and we can get our content out, and studios on our laptops to create content. But despite all this, the barriers kind of feel higher than ever. Why is that? And why does that? And what does that mean for not just for artists, but also for promoters or producers trying to create new platforms, new independent events? And is the idea of starting an independent festival even possible anymore? It was impossible when I did it with some of my projects a long time ago, and I think it's harder now. So let's talk about this barrier to entry to getting started and for all of us and for all people in the industry.
So I can speak to the artist side. And so I think what you alluded to is that the barrier to entry is actually non-existent, which makes it higher in the sense that in the old days, you would save up money and to pay for recordings, and then you'd have your demo tape or demo CD or whatever. And those would be the songs that there's your business card, and then you just gig and try and develop a following. You'd be sending your demos out to people, to gatekeepers. And the hard part about that system was that there were people that had to decide, record labels essentially, if they were going to invest money into you, because there was higher cost to get things done, i.e. recording, and distribution. Now distribution is free. Recording is extremely cheap, and marketing is super cheap. Social media and everything. So it's great that everything is democratized, but because the barrier to entry is so low, the supply of new artists is it's incredible. What I tell aspiring artists is that the fundamentals, even though those barriers to entry have changed, the fundamentals about the business itself have not. It's built on 3 things, and now it's built on 3.5 things, which I'll get to. But the 3 things are great songs, great recordings of those songs, which is a different thing, and a great live show. And an aspiring artist needs to build habits around those 3 things. Those are the things that they can control. I then would advise, once you're nailing it there, that you try and get a manager and shore up the other things, the social media, the live show, the bookings, because doing those 3 things well, those are the things within the artist's control, is a full-time, and you probably have a side job. So between your side job to pay your bills, you need to be treating the act of writing a song like it's a job. So you might write Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays from 5 to 8 p.m. And you don't call off those hours unless it's an emergency, the same way you wouldn't call off your waiting tables job. Recordings of those songs. You need to have habits built around actually turning those compositions into great recordings, whether you're doing that or you've got, a team around, somebody that helps produce. And then a great live show. You need, even if it's just you and a DJ, you should be rehearsing that at least weekly, in front of a mirror, whatever it takes to become great live. And you just need to go out and play. Like in comedy, everybody talks about needing to bomb. Musicians have to go out and bomb. You just need to go play a bunch of shows. And I don't think that changes. And so the 4th thing now that we have is all artists are essentially their own content studios now, which sucks. You don't get into music to then also be making short form content. Mm-hmm. It's a real bummer. But the same way you need processes around those other 3 things, you essentially need processes around this 4th thing now too. And again, you don't have to be on mastering all platforms, but you might just really be great on YouTube. And so you figure out what you're doing there. And so that's from the artist standpoint, and I think that's that.
Do you feel that that the social media online aspect is getting like more and more important as it goes along? Because I actually just recently had an artist that was signed to a major label because they got really popular online, and the label thought, oh, this is going to be the next big TikTok sensation, and the artist wanted to go in and write songs. And there was kind of like an overlap in goals there, and the label ended up dropping the artist. So
yeah, and you're also seeing it. There's an artist right now that some friends of mine work on that has over 10 million monthly listeners. They've got 1 billion streams on a couple songs, and they just got dropped by Elektra for their follow-up. Because they had one song go viral on TikTok, and I'm sure Elektra came in with a huge bag of money, and they looked at the option they were going to have to pick up for their 2nd album, and they're like, it's not worth it. There are artists, that are getting signed off virality, who then, might have literally 1 billion streams, but then there's a 99% drop off on their next single. Mm-hmm. So to your point, Andrew, like, yes, it's important, but the thing is, marketing music, let's say the old ways of marketing, which were radio and press, and whatever, MTV. MTV's doesn't matter, but radio and press still exist. So you still might need to pay attention to these old forms of marketing. But then you have social media. There's all these new media ways. You might need to be seeding content to Reddit, whatever it is. And then you should be touring and doing everything and doing all of the hanging up posters. That stuff still exists still. So I think it's more about the fact that the ways you reach people are way more diluted. And there's just less people in any certain place. There's less people listening to the radio, but there's a lot of people, even amongst young people, Gen Z, are trying to give up social media, And so I think what you have to do is, again, what it comes down to, I think, for me, is how are you building habits and processes to try and excel in all of these domains? And what is the actual source product for those? It's the songs, the recordings, and the show. It's the video of the show that's going to Instagram, and people are like, that's dope. Again, so you have to control for what you can, and then just accept the fact that you just need to be in all these domains, and it just takes time.
Is short form content for social a requirement for an artist? Like, do they have to have those skills? Is that like one of the legs of the stool?
If somebody's starting out now, yes. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions to that rule, of course, but like LCD Sound System doesn't need to do that. They're already established.
But they established in the early 2000s.
Exactly.
Like, are we not going to get the next like Kevin Parker or Tame Impala because of this?
Well, we'll get that, but it'll be somebody that was also good at short form content. Because you're good at short form doesn't mean you're bad at writing songs you're playing live. It's just another way that you have to cut through the noise, because there are so many, like the amount of songs coming out every day is way more than when Tame Impala started.
Right.
Or LCD Sound System started. And so what those artists might have needed to do to cut through the noise was get access to capital by being really awesome and then getting somebody to bless their careers and keep them going. Now, the thing that blesses your career is you're good at this other thing. You're good in this other domain because you're just competing against more artists.
Well, it's just interesting to think about, like, are we not going to get the next Bob Dylan because that artist doesn't possess the social media skills? And it's like it's just a new version of the idea of, like, you have to be like this good looking to punch through in the mainstream in the 80s because of the rise in importance of music videos.
Right.
You know? So like, how does that sort of play into how the landscape of music is going to develop,
One other thing, and then I'll stop hogging the mic. It might have been like connections like that an artist has might be still really important now, but you could conceivably come from not knowing anybody in the music industry and just really pop off on social media. Whereas in the past, if it was the 90s, that could still happen, but maybe your dad worked at a label or something. Like, you could get those types of things could matter a bit more. So again, there is some more democratization happening. So there's, as you said, pros and cons depending on the era for all these things.
Andrew, I want to hear your perspective on this scenario too, because we're, the challenges being out on the road, costs are rising. Like, how do these artists that are like, they've started their career and they have a following, but they're, crashing on the floor, they're sharing, personnel with another act in the package. What are the things that you're looking for when you can green light an artist like vision for a tour?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, tour support usually from a label, but if they don't have a label, if they're straight up starting up from scratch, like Reed said, I mean, you got to be creative. You got to find ways to transport cheaper, because when you look at a ticket price online, it says, oh, this is $20 to get into the show. And then you say, oh, this artist must be doing well. They're going to be pocketing $20. Well, that's not true, because there's promoters adjustments, there's ticket fees, there's all these things that eat away at that gross revenue. And then you got to think about the artist who's paying for insurance, they're paying for transportation, they're paying for their crew, they're paying for whatever it may be. So it's really tough when you begin when those gross figures aren't high. We've advised some artists to say, hey, let's hold off until we know we can hit a market better to go on tour. So starting off, it's absolutely tricky.
And if you don't have tour support, is there like a consideration of like, okay, we like made some money playing locally, or maybe we have a good manager, and I think like catching a commercial sync is probably part of the landscape for some of these artists.
For a lot of the artists that I work with, we typically take on artists that have signed some sort of deal or that have had some sort of income from either a label or an investor, and we tell them like, hey, you might not make any money on touring for a couple years. And this is even with artists that are grossing, I had an artist that it's 3 kids in their early 20s that are doing 300 to 400 cap venues a night, 30 show tour, grossed $300,000 and didn't really come home with anything. So you really kind of have to rely on other sources of income, merch, obviously. Yeah. But sometimes touring with a new artist can take years to develop, and especially if you have any type of production costs, it could take years to be in the green.
And you can't go to a market and then like not come back for 3 years.
Right, exactly. And it's something that you have to do. So you just got to be smart about it.
And what does tour support look like for artists of this level that we're talking about?
It depends. So typically when you sign a record deal, there's buckets that the label will provide. There's a marketing fund, there's a recording fund, there's tour support fund. With tour support, and you have to, kind of play the game with the label with what you want to tap into. But with tour support, typically, if you know you're going to lose your ass on tour and the label supporting you, you'll usually provide them with a budget and say, hey, like, we're going to lose 60 grand if we do this tour. Will you help us out? And that's usually what that looks like.
Right. Tom, I always thought it was amazing, and it is amazing, that like GovBall was able to get into the black and break even the first year. Like, you don't really see that. That's a little bit of like a music industry unicorn scenario. And congratulations on doing that and making that work. I came to the event the first year, but I think you gave me a free ticket. Can you talk a bit about the challenges of starting a new event in this environment, like where we're at today with like talent prices have been high for a very long time, higher for festivals than they are for hard ticket dates. If an artist is selling out a theater in one market, they're charging multiples to play festivals everywhere. How do you what are your main challenges when you think about like starting a new festival? What are the kinds of things you're looking about, and what are the angles that you think you can play to do this?
So if you're an independent promoter wanting to do a festival, it's harder now than it's ever been because the cash flow model has changed so substantially. Over the past 10 years, there's been many festivals, independents, and even major festivals that have canceled because of bad ticket sales. And some artists haven't gotten paid as a result of that. So some of these agents and managers are demanding 50%, 75%, 100% upon confirmation before you can even announce the show and put it on sale. And that just makes the business model completely untenable and impossible for a lot of people.
I know.
If you're lucky enough to either have the funding to do that, your next issue is going to be just the abundance in supply when it comes to festivals. I feel like there's a festival in every major market and multiple of those. And I think we're getting to a point now where maybe there's just too many, and we're going to start to see some go away. We've already seen some go away, last year and this year. I pulled down a show this year, canceled it after going on sale because the sales weren't there, and it was a smarter business decision to have the show not play than to play it. So when you're starting something new now, I think you really have to find a void in the market, and that's what we did with GovBall. There are, the festival culture globally, but especially in the U.S., was really growing at a rapid clip with Coachella, Bonnaroo, Lollapalooza, Austin City Limits starting to just, increase their sales every year. And I just wondered why New York City didn't have a festival like these other cities did. And it was very fortunate timing, but we also picked a very specific lane programming-wise that first year. We had 2 stages, and we focused on kind of more accessible indie, EDM, dance, hip-hop music. So stuff you'd hear at a college party or at a college bar. We got to a point with GovBall where we started to get too eclectic, and we saw that hurt our sales. So we decided to not have every genre under the sun and really pick a lane of pop music. So when I look to start new festivals now, it's really does the market need it? Does the market want it? And how good of a venue is it? Somebody much smarter than me said that the festival business is a real estate business. And you have to find a venue that people want to go to by itself to get a winner. And I think that's 100% true. You look at every successful festival, from Jazz Fest here in New Orleans to Lollapalooza in Chicago to Coachella in Palm Springs, they're in incredible, incredible venues, incredible cities, but incredible venues that people want to go to by itself. And you have to, find that special mix of a void in the market, hotel rooms for people to stay in, not a lot of competition, and a very specific lane that has an audience that you can specifically target. Because if you have a couple bands from a certain genre or scene, it might not be enough to compel that person to spend $150 and spend, one of their days off of work there. So it's finding that mix, and it's continuing to evolve for sure.
Absolutely. And so, what are the types of differentiators that you think are still possible to establish a new event? There's not a lot of voids in the market. There's not a lot of markets that don't have festivals either in the market or nearby.
So I think, it used to be only primary markets had festivals. Now secondaries and tertiaries are starting to have festivals. You're starting to see a rise of festivals just outside of major markets. So like, Connecticut, that's servicing Connecticut, but also New York and Massachusetts. There's a festival called Pilgrimage in Franklin, Tennessee, that is just outside of Nashville, but is a very, very wealthy city. And I think you have to service these unique niches and find markets that just have a lot of people and that's truly underserved with good content and unique experiences.
How does the festival side of the business play into the way you guys are incubating artists from your perspective on the management and the business management side?
I mean, they're always the term we use are anchors, and Tom, I'm sure you're aware of that. Like the fact, Paul, what you said, like you do charge more to play at a festival than you do at a hard ticket, but increasingly hard tickets don't make sense sometimes for club level acts, especially if they have a certain income expectation. So what we're looking to do oftentimes, we're routing a tour for an artist of ours for the spring, but we have Miami Jazz Fest and a couple other festivals that we need to lock in to then do the other hard ticket routing that goes with it. Hard ticket meaning just, club shows, just ticketed shows. So they're absolutely essential to get to Europe or any other foreign country. You have to have them. And then in the U.S., they are typically, there's a level of artists that you can get to where you're just selling out big theaters or arenas where it's not this case, but otherwise it's your profit margin for your touring business if you're an indie act. And so I think the hard part that we experience is that we manage a lot of artists that are in their 30s and 40s and might have broken 10 or 20 years ago. Some we've got artists that are in their 20s that are still experiencing that rise. And, to govball college kids, they may not know who an act that we manage is, because that audience is, millennials or Gen X. And so you got to figure out what festival opportunities exist for those, so it's always a moving target. And, but it's still, it's an essential part of any touring artist business for the most part.
Right on. Andrew?
Yeah, I was gonna echo what Reed said, that they're typically anchor dates that are around the festival, and a lot of times it makes or break a tour. I have a band that did a 40-date tour of the U.S., and the only reason they could do it is because there was 2 festivals in there. So a lot of times it's pretty much make or break for an artist when it comes to touring.
And aside from the economics, how important is it from a visibility and a marketing perspective to be on the poster to start with, and then to have a great show and be ready for the show when the festival plays? Where does this fit into the equation?
It is a key touch. So I tend to think of marketing an artist the campaign never really ends. It just does. It ebbs and flows a little bit. But yeah, it becomes a cornerstone. So we've got an act that's going on that just filmed a Tiny Desk and has a Tiny Desk coming out in November. And so it's all right, let's get a song out on the other side of it. We're planning what are we going to do to capitalize on that attention? And you would do the same thing if you're on the Govball lineup. You're going to think, and you have these conversations all the time because you're being who's got an album coming out and that sort of thing. But you also might have had an album come out 6 months before you play Govball, so you're in your touring cycle, but you might do something really cool around it that still calls back to the album. And so you use these big festival moments as cornerstones to keep telling the story that you're currently trying to tell with whatever cycle you're in as an artist.
It's a really interesting part of the business, and also just the idea that these festival shows are probably some of the artists' more challenging shows because it's not their stage and it's not their production, and you got people coming and going, and sometimes you're playing without the light show, and these are just challenges that exist for all the ranges of artists that are coming out to the festival. But at the same time, I feel like these plays need to be prioritized for the artists because it's such a big opportunity to build a buzz, and also for the festivals. I think you kind of depend on these young bands that are going to come there and have a really monumental performance, so then you can establish yourself as a brand separate from just the artists that are playing every year. But you have this, your brand grows as a curator. You know, like people know that they're going to see tomorrow's headliners like first up at your festival, so you better get there early and start drinking beer and buying merch and like seeing these things, because you're going to be like kind of growing and evolving as your tastes with these artists as they grow to their career and hopefully go on the main stage. You know, like at Bonnaroo, we had a real focus every year. In a lot of good festivals, there's a lot, just as much care that go into the bottom of the lineup as the top. You know, because like the idea that you're going to get to see My Morning Jacket open the tent, or you're going to get to see like Mumford and Sons on their first tour. And in a year, these are some of the headliners, and that's a really valuable thing for everybody. I want to talk about the rising, kind of decrease in affordability on the fan side a little bit, in what the sustainability level is there. You know, fans are paying more than ever for tickets, for drinks, for parking, for merch, the whole experience. At the same time, I think we've been talking about the artist tours are squeezed and prices are rising on that side too, and for sure on the festival side. So, and that's in part, I think production's more expensive. It's more challenging for the clubs to keep the doors open and staff the rooms. And there's rising expectations for the quality of the show. So there's like, seems to be kind of a growing crush here. How do we balance making these shows and events affordable for fans while keeping them sustainable for the artists and kind of the creative economy around it?
So we're supposed to have an interview with Polestar tomorrow about this, but we'll break it here, and we might have to push that Polestar interview back.
Is there an embargo on this?
There probably, I don't know. Well,
Josh Starkman, cut the cameras.
For Frida next year, so Frida put out a gospel album 6 weeks ago, and the tour, at least for the first batch of tickets that are go out for the first 100, 150 for each show, it's going to be pay what you can, like you're going to church. And so Radiohead did this within Rainbows, and so we're copying that for the live side. And we picked out, it looks like there's a couple different promoters that are like, we're getting offers from those today, and then I'm supposed to talk about them with Polestar tomorrow. So we'll see if that realistically happens. But the idea here, the gamble that we're taking is it's going to be a big story. Foster thinks it's a bad idea, which it could be. That's why it's only a few tickets. But the point is, we're thinking that there's going to be people that pay $10 or $20, and we think that there's going to be people that see this as a gesture of goodwill and pay $100. And we're going to say, like, here's the suggested price. This is what it costs for us to actually do this show. So we need to, people will know what the average is. We need to hit $25, $30 it is, per ticket. But if you can't afford that, pay $10.
Well, that's amazing to show that trust in the fan, and that's like a really cool social experiment, and I hope that crushes, because the album is just so groundbreaking. It's such a quality record. I definitely recommend everybody go and spend some time with it and listen to it. Andrew, what do you think about this scenario of rising costs on all sides for fans and artists, and how do we keep things sustainable?
As a music fan myself, I mean, it's becoming increasingly hard to go all the shows that you want. It's tough from all sides of the industry, because everyone needs to. No one can lose money on it. So anytime that I see a venue increasing their price, I'm not upset about it, because it makes sense from everyone's side. The rising costs is happening everywhere, and unfortunately, it's sometimes falls on the fan to have to deal with it. But yeah, I mean, it's tough anywhere.
Tom, I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, just the rising costs and the challenges of doing these things, but how important is it for you on the festival side to invest in the production and put money back into the show that's not necessarily selling tickets for this year?
I mean, you have to invest in the experience more than anything else, right? Because you want people to have a great time and to tell their friends, and that word of mouth could certainly drive a future year's sales without a doubt. I think on the affordability part, if we don't have the revenue that we need, we got to find it. We have to create those extra line items. Sponsorship has been a huge growth segment, I think, in the festival business as a whole, but also for individual artists. These artists doing brand deals and developing their own lines and whatnot. We really lean on our sponsorship team to drive new deals and to chop up different categories. So, in the alcohol space, we have a sponsor for whiskey and vodka and gin, and And then in the apparel space, you have an apparel provider, but then you also have a sunglass provider, and then you have another merchant. So you really just try to cut up as many categories as you can and sell against it. And then, you look online and you see that chocolate covered strawberries are all over fucking TikTok, and it's a huge thing. And like, why is this a big thing? But maybe we should have a chocolate covered strawberry vendor, and you get it and it crushes. And then you look at your F&B and, you don't have enough big name New York City vendors. So then you give Shake Shack a better commission rate, and then they come out and then they totally blow sales off the roof. So you just got to be creative and try to find new revenue streams and complementary ones to make up that shortfall wherever you can. You just got to get down in the trenches and find it where you can. And then on the discounting end, no promoter likes to discount tickets at all. I think it's super interesting what Big Frida is doing, and what Radiohead did. I'm still unsure how much money Radiohead made from that one, but the record is incredible, so that's the most important part. But promoters do a lot of things. They discount tickets, they do bundles, they do price increases. You see that more and more often these days, where promoters are doing these timed price increases. So this Friday, ticket prices increased by $10. That drives a lot of sales. It allows you to keep it cheaper on the front end, and then maybe by the time you get to the show, tickets are more expensive than they were on the last day of the sales cycle the previous year. You just got to find and experiment with these different strategies and see what sticks to make up that revenue.
Do you have a philosophy when it comes to sponsorship? Because you have your brand, and your brand is built on an authentic experience, but there can be a tipping point where you have too much signage and too much branding and too much corporate presence from these brands that are disconnected from the event. So how do you kind of like manage the idea of like bringing in the sponsors, bringing in those dollars, but you don't have it dilute your brand?
I don't think there really is a tipping point. And I'll point to Jazz Fest, right? Put on by Shell. Most every stage is sponsored. Nobody cares. The experience and the amount of money that's invested in the talent, in the overall vibe, it overshadows all of those corporate partners. And everybody thinks Jazz Fest is cool as hell because it's in New Orleans and the programming's amazing and there's nothing else quite like it. So I think you can have a million brands under the sun. It's what you program around those brands and what else is additive to the experience that really makes it stand out. I used to be at a point where, I wanted Go Ball to be like Coachella. We won't have any, names on our stages. We can only have cool sponsors. But frankly, my audience doesn't care. They just want cool stuff to do, or stuff to do, period, when they're not seeing music. And the New York City experience is a commercial one. You go to Times Square, Soho, wherever, there's stores everywhere. And it's cool to pop into a store that looks interesting and just, get free stuff, do something different and unique. So we're kind of giving people a New York City experience in the park. And even Bonnaroo over the years has gotten more and more brand heavy. And I think it just is stuff for them to do. And as long as the bands that are booked are good and people have a good time, nobody comments on the brands.
Right, and if the sponsorship dollars allow you to increase the experience and put delay towers on the main stage, that's a win for everybody. And I think Jazz Fest is a good example because it's like the most authentic festival that anybody can think of, and nobody like talks about that aspect of it. I think with Bonnaroo and some of these other events that we worked on together, we were always sensitive about this issue because we really wanted the brand sponsorship presence to enhance the experience in some way for the fans or for the artists or for the staff. And that was kind of our North Star, and it kind of does, so.
What's, if you don't mind, like, what are in terms of your revenue mix between ticket sales and sponsors, like, are there any other, I guess, vendors? Is there any other major piece of revenue of a festival besides any of that? And like, what does the revenue mix, like, percentage-wise look like? If you're
it really varies per show. Obviously, you have tickets, that's number one, sponsorship, that's number two, and then you go way lower down on the list, and then you get to food and beverage, and you get to merchandise, and you get to various things like lost and found, locker rentals, fees for losing your wristband. and you have to go get a new one and whatnot. But it's really driven by ticket sales and sponsorship, and every market's different, right? Coachella, Bonnaroo, Gov Ball, Lollapalooza, these are massive sponsorship-driven festivals, and then the smaller ones less so.
It's interesting you mentioned that food and beverage is so far down the list, because I don't know, whenever I go to a festival, I'm always thinking, wow, like it's so expensive to buy water here. So it's interesting that you say that. And I was actually caught the end of the last panel who mentioned the decrease in alcohol sales, like kids aren't drinking as much anymore. Has that affected your festival at all?
Yeah, it's terrible.
I can imagine.
It's absolutely awful. Because we go out and we try to get beer and alcohol sponsors, and we get a bunch of them. What I mentioned earlier about the hugeness of sponsorship, that's specific to the bigger festivals, right? That do serious volume. But as it relates to alcohol sales, they've certainly gone down. And that's just maybe in New York City, weed was legalized a couple years ago, so I think that's part of it. I think it's a generational thing. I'm also a believer that it will come back and that everything's just a cycle. It's just a matter of time. Right. As soon as some artist portrays it being cool to get tipsy, then it will rise again. But again, it's getting more nifty with your offerings, right? Having more non-alcoholic beverages, having more frozen beverages, THC seltzers. And then, we'll be at a place in the future where every festival will have, like they do at Outside Lands, like a Grasslands where you can buy weed, and that becomes a revenue stream. Mm-hmm. So you just evolve with the times, and some festivals still crush alcohol sales, right? The ones that skew older. I'm sure Jazz Fest is great. I remember being able to buy a case of beer at Jazz Fest, which is wild. But it evolves.
All right, I want to move into the quick lightning round, and then hopefully we have a little bit of time left over to turn over some questions to the audience here. Andrew, if you could give one piece of financial advice to a young artist or band starting out, what's your advice?
Budget from the get-go and start an LLC. Like I said earlier, liability protection is number one.
Reed, same question.
Focus on the art and focus on the live show.
Is music a lost leader for marketing?
Is music just a loss leader? And
is it something that you need to spend on as like a marketing expense to sell tickets where you're making money?
Here's what sucks. Like, it's all loss leaders.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out a way to get creative, because people when you build out a team, everybody on the team is looking at other people to be the loss leaders. So the label is looking at touring, being like, this is the thing that you guys need to take a hit on. And then the agents are looking at the label being like, they need to provide tour support. Like, the music's not what you make money on. Like, but the point is, like, you can make a rationale that all of it is a loss leader, because sorry, I'm doing an awful job at lighting.
I didn't mean to trigger you.
No. All right, here's the thing about music. It is, in order to make a living, you have to touch, at least the model as it's set right now, you have to have a ton of fans to actually build a sustainable living. You have to have thousands upon thousands of fans. Now, as you get bigger, you can then diversify your offerings to where your recorded music, you can be selling box sets or figuring out ways to monetize that music better. You can sell VIP, super VIP packages to your live event, if you're a certain level of big, and pick off people, at a different price point. So you can then start to vary your price points in these different verticals. But for the most part, the strategy most artists take is try and get as many fans as possible to build a career. And any business where you do that it's a really tough business. Like, if you're a SaaS platformer, it's great to have 5 corporate customers that just pay you a ton of money, and that's your business. But not in music. You've got yeah. Anyway,
Tom, do you have some financial advice? What's the thing that you would advise to a young artist, a young promoter that's like trying to start out and go down the path you went down?
At Superfly, our old boss, John Mayers, rest in peace, once told me, looking me dead in the eye and said, "Tom, the best ideas are stolen." I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "The best ideas are stolen. What we did with Bonnaroo, we pulled from going to Coachella, from looking what's happening over in Europe and seeing what's been successful for everybody else and looking at how these folks filled a void in the market. From a financial perspective, you really have to know what you're doing. And where I was at an advantage starting GovBall was I had worked at Superfly. I had seen the entire pro forma and understood the entire festival business model in different markets and different kinds of shows, and that gave me a leg up to starting my own because I knew what to expect. And then knowing, looking at the landscape and seeing what festivals have been successful, what festivals have not been successful, and really studying why they found success or why they found failure is just really invaluable because history repeats itself, and there's a lot to learn and from our industry in really a short period of time because the festival space has just become such a force in the past 15 years or so.
Right on. That's amazing answer. Tom, Andrew, Reed, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate the wisdom. Sure. Yeah, please.
Why, for additional revenue, why do not the festivals partner with like an AXS, which they've come to Jazz Fest like 10 years ago, to videotape segments of the big festival, package them, and then make it accessible to people who live all over the country who can't make it to Jazz Fest. I haven't always lived in New Orleans, but I know there's people who would love and would pay to see segments of Jazz Fest, but I don't know why that doesn't happen.
Are you talking about a live stream?
Like either live stream or even packaging it, like videotaping it and then making it accessible and showing it on whatever.
I mean, we would love to do that to get our brand and the experience out to the masses. The reality is that it's very, very expensive to capture that content. The biggest barrier, though, is that it's really hard to get the rights from the artist to do that, the licensing.
And it's not just the artist, it's also the publisher and the label and the artist. It's like 3 different entities.
You can actually answer this question better than anybody, I think.
I used to produce the live streams from a lot of our events, and it was really challenging process. And unless you have a corporate sponsor that's going to pay for it, you're basically not doing it.
Well, no, I was just saying there's also services like nugs.net that do that and provide a royalty to the artist. But yeah, I imagine that just the expense of capturing it is just kind of crazy high.
Yeah.
But AXS, the TV cable network, in the past they've done it.
Yeah.
Jazz Fest.
A lot of those networks have played with it and have done it, but right now I think you're more seeing like the larger players in the broadcast space are the ones that are doing those kind of deals with the larger festivals. And they have some leverage with the artists because they know there's going to be audience. It's not really like that easy on the festival side to say we're going to do this unless you have the broadcast partner that's going to do a lot of the legwork and cut the licensing deals.
I mean, Free to played Outside Lands earlier, and it was on Amazon. The whole thing was on Amazon. So, amen. Yeah, I was getting texted by Foster during the show. Anyway,
like on the broadcast.
That's actually what it was. Yeah.
Anyway. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay.
Really, really great insight, by the way. Really seeing the distribution of knowledge on the stage. My question was kind of about messaging, sort of the disparity between the low ticket or the ticket that's priced by the fan all the way up to the VIP. And thinking about what Andrew said about limiting liability of businesses, almost like limiting the liability of your messaging when you're targeting rich people versus people who are lower income. Is this something that's taken into consideration when you're discussing different ticketing options among your communication channels?
I think for us, we just want to provide an experience for you, no matter whether you earn $20K a year or $1 million plus a year. And typically it's a GA plus, VIP, super VIP, pit, side stage. I mean, cabana, having something for everybody, and then having it all in an easy to digest format on your tickets page. And then a lot of festivals have volunteer programs where you can work toward your ticket, and that in many times that's something that folks want to do. Sometimes it's what folks have to do to check a box with their local municipality or their local parks organization, but it allows folks to, do 4 hours of labor at a charity in exchange for a 3-day ticket. So in terms of messaging, we just want it to be super clear and make sure that people know without a doubt that there's a price point and experience for them.
Yeah, and in terms of like club shows, those higher ticket values actually do help the artist. So on the back end, if you're earning points, if it's a deal where you have a guarantee plus a percentage of the door, the more you earn, the more the artist is going to get. So it helps the artist too.
Right on. Thank you guys so much. Really, everyone learned a lot. I know I did. So thank you guys for the time.
Thanks, Al.
Next panel will be in 10 minutes. We're going to walk down Grammy Street with Grammy winners, nominees, and somebody actually from the Grammys. In the meantime, free Stella's outside at the bar, courtesy of NOLA by NOLA. So there's also a cash bar, but have yourself a beer. Let's bring some to the sound guys, the team, right? All right, we'll do this straight up at 5 o'clock. Thank you all. You've been great so far. More to come. Hello, hello. Oh, it is on. I found the on switch. Thank you very much. It's those damn free Stellas, I tell you. Yay. All right. All right, we're very excited for this panel. I am personally very excited for this panel, and it's amazing that there are so many people on this panel because we're going to take a walk down Grammy Street and talk to people who have walked down Grammy Street and got nominated, and some who got the actual trophy. Grammy winners in the room. This is awesome. I have no idea who's moderating this at this point, so I'm just going to put the mic right here. And so it looks like it's the guy with the ponytail. So I'll let him introduce everybody. And what are you looking for? Oh, that was yours. I thought it was Paul's. I put it over there so he wouldn't forget it. Put Jameson in the middle. There you go. All right. You got it, Howie? Ladies and gentlemen, Howie Kaplan of the Howlin' Wolf and Howlin' Wolf Management and a Grammy winner amongst the many. Thank you.
Well, manager of the Grammy Award-winning Rebirth Brass Band. We have to say that every time because it's that big a deal. This is actually a really, really fun panel to do because this is something that took a year of my life. When we first came out, and Reed, I'm going to have everybody come through and introduce themselves, but when they first changed the categories for the Grammy, they had all these multiple categories. They had Zydeco and they had, all these different things. And when they came up with Regional Roots, I remember having a conversation with Mark from Basin Street Records and Reed, and we were talking like, how does this is like the Louisiana category. We're going to take this and we're going to move it forward. And lo and behold, that's what happened. And you learn so much about learning the process and what the next steps are. And you don't realize how important it is. And I'll share just a quick moment and then I'll let everybody kind of go through and do their thing. But I remember being at the Grammys. For those of you who don't know, the Grammys themselves, the show you watch is actually kind of boring. You can't have any food or drink and you go and you're like, I remember Taylor Swift opened up the one where we won and she's there in overalls. She was still a country star at the time. And the real party is before. And there we are. And I remember Derek Tabb, we're sitting out on the loading dock because we're actually playing at the Grammys and we couldn't cancel a gig the day before. So I flew in the day before and did their sound check without the band. And these guys are so good at what they do. Like we're literally walking through and Phil, the leader of Rebirth, founder of Rebirth had a stroke and we're like trying to figure out how he's going to get up these stairs and who's going to do what. And literally, it was the most amazing sound check we've ever had because we didn't play one note. And we're sitting out on this loading dock. We get there, we're walking through, and Derek Tabb looks at me and he goes, if you were a betting man, are we going to win this? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to win this. And we get up there and we're standing there. We played, and then they had to stand off to the side. So like, the Foo Fighters won an award for something, and then it was Derek Trucks, and Derek Trucks is friends with the band, so we're sitting there, and he's got his, everybody has the same one. It's like two of them, they hand them off, and they come back through. And Derek Trucks is sitting there talking, and he won't stop talking. If you've ever met Derek Trucks, he likes a good conversation. And we're talking, and finally I'm like, they're announcing who's going to get the award. And finally I'm like, Derek, he's like, oh man, sorry. And then the next words out of their mouth were Rebirth Brass Band. And you could just feel like from these guys in the whole room, because that's a room of people that get it. There were about 4,000 people in that room, and every single one of them knew what a Grammy really meant, because this isn't a People's Choice Award. You get voted on it, especially a category like this. You have to take one of your votes, and it's not like one of the popular categories. So Reed can actually go into better detail with all of that, but why don't I let each one of the panel introduce and say what you're excited about, what your thoughts are, how you came to that point, and then we'll kind of work our way back around.
I'm Ari Title, guitar player, vocalist, songwriter, producer with The Rumble, and a 4-time Grammy Award nominee.
And I kind of want to interject in there for those of you that don't know, actually getting nominated is harder than winning. Like getting past that process is so insanely difficult. So tell us a little bit about how you've gotten through those first steps.
Gosh, the first couple, I was a member of Chawa, and I wasn't as involved with the process. and then the third nomination I got was with the Rumble. I actually submitted that one myself, kind of at the buzzer, because our manager told. Yeah. Well, no, our manager at the time said, "Oh, you guys don't have a shot. It's a live record. You guys have only been a band for a year. Like, no one's gonna vote for you."
I hope he's not your manager anymore.
He's not. So, yeah, I said, screw that. I'm submitting, and yeah.
All right, so four-time nominee. Tell us about so when you're doing it, and some people that don't know, Rebirth's actually been nominated twice. One time we didn't even know about it. That was for a recording for the Jazz and Heritage Festival that we didn't know existed, which was really funny. And it was not a good recording. And so when we call the regional roots the New Orleans category, it really is. It's kind of this gumbo of all these different things. And that time it was the North Carolina. I'm spacing on who it was because it's been a few years. And it was also literally the day after Kobe Bryant died. So being there was very emotional and very odd, and the security that was coming from it. So when you did it, you knew about the categories. Did you talk to anybody else about getting in?
Yeah, all of my nominations have been in the regional roots category so far. So as a Mardi Gras Indian band, obviously it's kind of where you go and fight for the death against the Hawaiians.
and the Cajun Zydeco
and the Zydeco artists.
It's you do the battle in state as well. So let's go to the next one.
Yeah, my name is Jameson Ross. Most people know me as a drummer, but I'm an artist, producer, and also a label exec of a label that I started a couple years back. And yeah, I have definitely been nominated for Grammys. I've been on the losing and the winning side of Grammys. And I always try to keep it music first, because sometimes once you lose, you start to kind of get that itch to kind of chase the win. And now I'm in a point in my career where I don't even think about any of it.
So how did winning a Grammy change how you produce, how you perform? What's the thought process? You said you got the itch. What made you?
Yeah, it actually changed a lot for me. I'll tell you. So quick story. I got nominated for producing Best Progressive R&B Album for Avery Sunshine. The same year, I had a single, "Say You Love Me," that did really well in R&B radio, and is to this day still being played. And that song was up to be nominated. It was on the ballot. It didn't get nominated. I was in the gym that morning, looking for "Say You Love Me" as traditional R&B performance, because I thought it had a great chance to get nominated. I really did, just because of how many, just the community was really on this song. So I'm sitting in the gym. I didn't get nominated. Of course, I see it. I'm like, all right, cool. Go back to my next set. I'm like not even thinking about Avery Sunshine and this record that I spent 2 years on versus a song I spent one night on, right? Just shows you how you sometimes can be really self-absorbed about what you're working on and forget what you do for others or what you do musically, regardless of who you're working with. And literally, Avery calls me crying on the phone. She's like, we did it. This is the nomination. So when she called me and I said, wait, what, the album? And at this point, I'm laughing at myself because I'm like, bro, you need to chill out. Like, you're thinking about your one song and an album that you spent, co-wrote, produced, 16 songs from scratch, just got a full nomination in a category that honestly, arguably, might be heavier than traditional R&B. And so when it won, it really showed me that it's not just about what you do, it's about your commitment and your service to the music industry. And when you're creating great art, it'll get seen by the right people, And so for me now, I just want to create and follow my instincts musically, and then let the kind of award kind of take care of itself. That's what it changed for me.
So how were you the one that submitted the nomination, or was this?
Well,
something.
I definitely walked them through it. She actually became
She's the one who
board now.
She's
the
on the
Atlanta
board,
chapter.
and that was through me. She got involved because when I started doing the record, she knew I was on the board, so she got involved in the board. Now she's a trustee, and that was because when I produced the record, I kind of walked her through what it means to put out an album, how to establish a record, how to make some footing in the industry. Sometimes you got to think the Recording Academy has a lot of, it has changed a lot in my opinion. You know, I got my first album was nominated in 2015 for Best Jazz Vocal Album. And I remember then, I had no clue I could be nominated for a Grammy. Since then, the Academy has shifted where independent artists are legit winning Grammys.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
More than major label nowadays.
More than major labels, yeah. So to your point, that for me, when I started producing the record with her, she was completely not involved with the Recording Academy. So that's why it was such a proud moment, because all of it went to the right place, you know?
And I think you're bringing up a really great point. You can't be unless you're a part of the process and get yourself in there. It's going to happen to you instead of happening for you. And that's a really, really great point to bring up. As we go to the man that does make things happen, you know, we should call you Mr. Grammy, because in Louisiana you are the Grammy.
Well, I don't have any Grammys. I'm just a weekend warrior, funk and R&B musician.
Well, you actually have quite a few, because I think you're partially responsible for a lot of the Grammys that have taken place, either directly or indirectly. You're constantly out there. For those of you that don't know this gentleman, and he needs no introduction, but I'm gonna let him do his own introduction. But you know, the capitalization, the categories that took place for, you know, Cajun Zydeco that didn't exist. You know, that was a battle that you fought for quite some time. When the categories were being, you know, melded in, when we got regional roots, you know, you were one of my first talks after I talked to Mark about, you know, are we going to submit this?
And there's fights going on as of right now about that category. I was on a 2-hour call today.
So
it's ongoing.
Why don't you give a little introduction to the folks that don't know you and what you do, and then tell us about that call.
Yeah. So I'm Reid Wick, although I do spell it with us. It's not 2 E's. It's R-E-I-D. I know, but I have to throw a little something at Sig over there. But yeah, I've been with the Academy. Well, so I've been a member for 30 years. So I joined when my now former compadre Sandy Hinderly and I started Independent Jazz and Blues label in 1994, and then we finally joined as members in like 96 or 97, whatever year that was, because similar to what Jameson's talking about, like we didn't know. Like, we started this label out of the blue, you know? We started putting out a couple of records, and it's like, well, how do you even get into that space? At the same time, I worked at Loyola University, and we were starting the music industry program at Loyola. And it's like, now we got to really understand how the industry works. We're just two musicians. I'm a guitar player. He was a piano player. How do we learn how this thing works? And so I wanted to, before I go into all that stuff, I just wanted to let people know that this is the way I start a lot of talks. What you see on TV, the TV show, is just a little portion of the Grammy Awards. That's just a CBS property until February 1st, and then it's a Disney property after February 2nd going forward for 10 years. But that we partner with and we put on a show. It's really meant to get a bazillion eyeballs. We give out 10 of the big categories that night. But as Howie was saying, the real party is in the afternoon, because that's when we give out the bulk of the awards. A lot of the pop categories, but all of the rootsy kind of things, all the craft committees, all that kind of stuff happens in the afternoon. And that's when it's the real worker bee, musician, and industry folks that are there. And that's always my favorite part, because it's my friends. You know, like I greeted Avery. So I have the coolest job. I greet the winners during the afternoon ceremony when they come off the stage. So I got to greet Avery. And about a half hour later, I got to greet Tank when she came off the stage. I got to greet Cleary when he won. Well, you guys, when y'all won, we weren't there. We were together though.
The Broadside.
We were at the Broadside doing our own little, what do we call that?
Our own Grammy party.
Yeah, we had our own Grammy party because it was the COVID year. So we had Grammy parties all over the country, and I just happened to be with Gregory here, and they won, and it was a great time. So, but I was there when y'all won a couple of years ago when the LPO won. But to me, that's the real magic, right? But I also want to let you know that the Academy is way more than the Grammy Awards. And that's the kind of work that I do year round, because that's the question I get asked. What do y'all do the rest of the 365 days of the year? Well, we do a lot, but it doesn't make the headlines like the Grammys. So we do a lot of professional development stuff. We do a lot of networking kind of things. Everybody on this stage, except you, we need to get you in. They're all Grammy members. They've all come to our events. They've played our events. They've been a part of everything. Some of them have been board members. Some more will be board members in the future. But, you know, has anybody heard of Music Cares? Has anybody had help from Music Cares? That's our sister foundation, you know. And to me, the biggest impact that our organization made on New Orleans was the couple of years after Katrina, when we raised and distributed $4 million to help musicians move back home and buy new instruments and rebuild their houses and all that stuff. And to me, that was my first couple of years as an employee. But that sealed the deal for me that this organization truly does give back to the communities that it serves, right? And I've seen it happen not only here. We invented the blueprint of how Music Cares reacts to natural disaster, because we've done it everywhere across the country, because today these natural disasters are happening every day, right? But the big granddaddy of them all for Music Cares was COVID, because we raised and distributed like $29 million to 30,000 musicians all over the country, which was pretty freaking amazing. Thank you, Music Cares.
Definitely.
But the area that I primarily focus on these days, and this is another area that's really important that a lot of people don't think about, is I work in the space of public policy and advocacy to make sure that the laws protect our musicians, don't get us screwed over, create incentives to help our music communities thrive. Howie and I have been working a couple of years together on some nasty ticketing stuff that's going on that we're trying to prevent from coming into Louisiana, and actually trying to present better legislation that actually protects artists and venues and promoters, instead of having these big tech companies insert their...
And the fans, by the way.
And the fans, yes.
Because without them, there is no Grammy, there is no anything.
But I probably have a million stories to share, but really, it's about making great music and recognizing it, right? And y'all all know, I mean, we don't have any better musicians on the planet than in New Orleans. I mean, they're sitting here on this stage.
And we're definitely going to get into that after the first
Yeah.
round. I do want to give another shout out to Music Cares, because it was walking into that room when I was picking up the packets for the guys, and everybody in that room, like, I was the Rebirth New Orleans guy, because they would do a Tuesday night at the Maple Leaf.
Yeah.
So they were on the ground here helping musicians, but they were also taking in part of our culture. And I think that's part of where the change came from, not just for the folks that work for the Academy, but the voters themselves. What Katrina did was literally take our music, take our culture, and scatter it to the four winds and play. There's a brass band scene in Portland that didn't exist pre-Katrina,
Memphis and in St.
we can
Louis
go down that
and-
list. So it's really important to understand again that the Grammys aren't just just about the award or just about that. It's so much more. And bringing up Music Cares, I think, is a great example of that. And let's move to Mr.
Gregory
Klein right
Klein.
here.
All right, I'm Craig Klein, and I am just a trombone player.
I don't know about that, but
and you know, I'm in about 6 or 7 different bands, and we put records out, and you have to produce your own record when you're an independent artist like that. We don't have the ability to hire somebody to come in and produce records. So I've got a little bit of experience of doing that. Just to kind of put it in perspective, one of the bands that I play in, the Storyville Stompers, I've been in for 45 years. We started in 1981, and we're still together, and we're still active. So all I've ever worried about was making the next gig. I just wondered when the next gig was. I didn't have any, the Grammys were something that I watched on television, right? Except my first experience with the Grammys was I started playing with Harry Connick Jr. in 1990, and he was nominated for a Grammy that he had recorded, a record called We Are in Love. And he put a big band out to support that record, and we played live on the Grammys, and I guess it was 91 at Radio City Music Hall. And that was just a great experience. I remember the after party at one of the hotels, and it was Count Basie with Tony Bennett, and wow, it was just like, wow, all of these rooms with this amazing music. So that was my hands-on first experience with the Grammys. And then after that, I just felt like I went back to work playing the trombone, and the Grammys was just something that I watched and never even thought about submitting a record to be nominated for a Grammy. It wasn't even on my radar. And putting out records. Another band that I play in is the New Orleans Nightcrawlers, and the Crawlers started in 1994. So we've been at it for about 30 years, you know. And we would put a record out, just for our own, we just wanted to document where the band was, and we never thought about nomination for Grammys. But then in 2019 or so, we recorded a record, and then the pandemic comes, and we're like, we have this record we're just getting ready to release. Screw it, let's just put it out anyway. You know, everybody was gonna hold their records and wait until after the pandemic. We were like, nah, just put the record out and just let it be what it is. And Kevin Clark, the trumpet player, he talked to Scott Billington. Scott loved the record, and he said, hey, you should nominate this for a Grammy. So Kevin went through the process and nominated it, and it got nominated for a Grammy. And that's when COVID hit, and that's what we were saying earlier. We couldn't go to the Grammy celebration, so you had the way they had to do it was, okay, on the day of the Grammys, you log in on your computer, and you watch, and if your name's called, they say you got 30 seconds to say something on your computer, you know. And it was crazy. We're going, oh, shoot, you know, you get nominated, you can't even go to the party. The party's the big deal, right? So we decided, because Cameron Dupuis was also nominated in that category, and his band is here in New Orleans, and we got to thinking, well, you know, let's have a Grammy party. The Broadside, it's open, so we could have, we talked to Cameron, he was all about it. So we had it set up where both bands were ready to play. And at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, and their band is on one side of the stage, and we're on the other side of the stage, facing, sort of cameras facing the audience. So, and we're waiting, and the thing was, whoever won, you had to go do interviews or whatever. So whoever won, the other band would take the stage and play. And then whoever won would go back and do some interviews online, and then we'd come back and take the stage and play. So when they announced us, it was a shock, a total shock. And the only thing that we could really think was, and I know probably when Rebirth won, that it wasn't just a win for your band, it's a win for the culture of New Orleans, because brass bands normally don't win Grammys. The Rebirth won one, and then it was a long time before anything happened again. It was how long ago did Rebirth win the Grammy? 20 years ago.
It's been a minute.
Yeah,
over 15.
So this doesn't really happen, and my only thought was, this is not just for us; it's for the whole city. It's for the brass band community and for the culture of the brass band. And Cameron's band played, and then we came on and we jammed and we played, and all of our family was there. And it was a special moment, like never before. We couldn't ever, you know, it would have been nice to walk the red carpet. That would have been cool. But that was cool like that, too, to have our whole family there with us when it happened. And then, 2 years later, we recorded another record, Too Much to Hold, and it got nominated again. The same time the LPO was nominated, and the same time that the Rumble was nominated. And we were like, okay, we're going this time. So we went to the Grammys, and we did experience that. And it was nice, and it was really nice that the LPO won that. I mean, of course, you always want to win a Grammy, but it felt good that the LPO and the Lost Bayou Ramblers won that Grammy. So that's my Grammy experience. Now, of course, now you think, oh, we got to make a record, and we got to get it nominated for a Grammy. So your whole your train of thought changes once you get into this vibe, you know, because I mean, it's nice to be acknowledged like that. So.
And it brings up a really great point that a Grammy here is not a Grammy anywhere else. Because here when you win, yeah, you may be in competition with the folks on this stage and people throughout, but to have Louisiana win it, to have New Orleans win it, where our culture is everything. There's a lot that Louisiana is not number one in outside of like childhood obesity and education failures. But what we do really, really good is culture. What we do really, really good, and I love that we keep bringing up things like post-Katrina and COVID. There are things that we do here. I remember when we, you know, being with the National Independent Venue Association, and they made a joke about how nobody in Louisiana, New Orleans really wanted to step up and be in charge. And we're like, it had nothing to do with that. It has to do with, we don't see each other as competitors. You know, Tipitinas and the Howlin' Wolf are not competitors. They never have been. The folks on the stage are not competing, even if they are in that category. And the fact that we see it that way, I think it kind of comes to kind of why we're sitting here talking about the Grammys, is because we have such a unique culture and such a unique way in how we treat each other, which kind of brings us to our last panelist.
For sure. I'm Anwar Nasir, Executive Director of the Louisiana Philharmonic Orchestra. And it's been a fantastic journey. I mean, I've only been with the orchestra since 2021. And we've put out a few albums in the past, primarily orchestral albums, or we've been playing background for someone, and then there's an album sitting in the can right now that they haven't put out that we were just talking about earlier. But we actually really came up with this concept. It was just a concert that we wanted to do with Lost Bayou. And these were brand new charts. We were redoing the charts that they had with from Beast of a Southern Wild, which is the Oscar-winning film, and things that they had done wonderful things with. But it was really much more of a small ensemble along with them. So we were working with another local guy, Jay Weigel, to arrange those charts for us, but then also to write some new music. Because one thing that we really believe in is that we don't want the orchestra to be the background band. It's really important that if we're doing something, that we want our audience to feel like this is something that's special. We don't we play with a lot of artists. We just played with Big Frida last week. We've done one with Taking the Bangers. We work with a lot of smaller artists as well. I mean, we even play with Andrea Bocelli. So everything from folks that could fill this room to the Smoothie King Center. We do it all. But we really want to make sure that everything that we're doing is authentic, and that we're using the orchestra as another instrument as opposed to just being in the background. So when we did a reading session at Loyola, just to make sure that the charts were sounding good before we got to the concert, and this was about maybe 6 weeks or so before the actual concert, and Jay pulls me aside. He's like, "Man, this sounds really good." I was like, "Yeah, Jay, it sounds good. People are going to be excited about it." He's like, "No, this sounds really good. You should record it." I'm like, "Well, recording's expensive. It is really, really expensive." And I'm like, we obviously are not in the business of just putting out records. So I was just like, we're halfway through our season. I got 10 more concerts to go. I got musicians on salary that we got to take care of, and I got all the other expenses. But he just kept nailing it home, and I was like, all right, we're gonna do it. We're gonna record this album. We're gonna see how it goes, and we're just gonna put it out. And a whole bunch of legalese and things like that about orchestras, because obviously our musicians are union, and then there are specific rules and restrictions about what orchestras can do, whether we put out the album or whether the other band puts out, or whoever we're playing with puts out the album, whether it's strictly orchestral or whether you're going to broadcast it on TV. And we said, okay, well, it's actually less expensive if we put it out than if anybody else does. But we've never done that before, so I actually should say, had to spin up a record label in a short amount of time. I had to figure out how to do that and figure out how to get an album up on Spotify and iTunes and all of those things. The concert went absolutely wonderful. The recording sounded great. And we ended up putting the album out very much at right around the deadline, just to make sure that we had it out. Lost Bayou had been through this before because they're Grammy winners. And so fortunately we had some help with them to say, all right, this is what you need to do. You need to make sure they were keeping me honest in terms of making sure that you put the things out, you get it done on time. Like, I'd never written liner notes before. I had to design the album cover, all the things, make sure everybody was credited appropriately. And even working with Esplanade Studios on like, where do we track it? Do we start with one of the Lost Bayou tunes? Do we start with one of the orchestral tunes? Like, so we really sat around and did all of these things, and it was hearkening. A lot of folks don't know this. Reed just found this out maybe a month or so ago, but I used to be in a boy band in my early days, and I remember sitting around in the studio like doing that exact same thing. So I would have never thought that once that part of my career ended, that I'd be doing that for this. So album comes out, around late July, early August or so. And then I remember one of my team members comes into the office and she's like, Grammy nominations come out tomorrow. And of course, because we put it out, I could see who's listening to it and where they're listening to it. And, I could see who's not listening to it because I know how that works too. And I was like, there's no way that we're going to get nominated. Like, that's just not a thing, right? And we had done the whole campaign and all of that. And, you just don't know, right? You just really have no idea. And then the next day, I'm standing there, and nominations are rolling out, and I just completely forgot about it because I'm going about my day. I'm like, I got another concert to sell. I got, money to raise and do all the things. And the next thing, my watch starts buzzing. And it's like, oh, congratulations, LPO, nominated for a Grammy. I was like, what is happening? This is insane. Then it starts ringing, and then it's like, all right, what's happening? And I was like, okay, we're there. It's going down, and then like, okay, now I gotta get a tux that I don't normally wear to just like our concert, because I was like, now I'm going to the Grammys. Never thought that was gonna be a thing. Flash forward, we get there. Of course, the whole category was, New Orleans and Louisiana artists, which felt really, really great for us, right? As the Orchestra of Louisiana, based here in New Orleans. And doing it with a band like Lost Bayou that really represents, true like Louisiana culture and music. So my flight gets delayed. I miss our little party that we're gonna have where Lost Bayou was playing and everything like that. I was gonna introduce them. I'm like, listen, Delta, don't mess this up for me. Like this is my chance, right? So I end up flying out. I get there late that night. I barely make it to the nominee party that they have. Get our little nominee medal, which was really great. Which actually I think the nominee medal is actually pretty cool too. So I really love that. It's a thing that I didn't even know existed before. So I'm glad that I made it for that. And then we found out during the daytime program, which is actually really, really cool that everybody's talked about, but it is a long day. It is a long day. Like I got up, I ate breakfast that morning because I couldn't really sleep, was nervous. And then, we were pretty much towards the tail end of that. So we're there for hours on end because they don't tell you when you're, and like I said, this is my first time. So we're, I think maybe the 5th or 6th to the last category that's going to get announced. So you've been there and I'm clapping for all my friends, like all the orchestras that are winning and all the, all the folks that I see and I know and I love. And I'm like, oh, they're such and such and I love them. And it was such a cool experience. But then we were like I said, we go up, they finally get to our category and we actually tied our category, which is a pretty unique thing. I mean, they've only had a handful of ties in the history of the Grammys. So, and we were the second folks to get announced. So I can't even remember the first band because I'm blanking on it, but they walk off with the card. Thank you. Yes. And yes. So they walk off with the card. So they're like, they announce that it's a tie and they go up there, they do their acceptance speech, they walk off with the card and everyone's just like, well, what else? Yeah, so they finally come back and announce, and I'm like, I can't believe that we won. And so we go up there, do all the things, and then we get whisked into the back. You do the whole, all of the exciting interviews and everything like that, but we missed the beginning of the actual broadcast because we're working through all of the things. And nobody tells you that because of that point that we had left all of our stuff because, of course, you're not prepared. We couldn't get back in to the theater to go get our stuff. So it was just such a weird moment, but such an exciting moment. And then we finally get our stuff. We go over and get seated there about, maybe an hour into the televised broadcast at this point. And we sit down and I'm seeing all the people that I know and love, just walking by. And it felt so wonderful to be there in that moment. I saw a DJ that I absolutely love and, I don't miss any of his shows ever. And so I yelled at him, and I was like, hey, he was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, we won a Grammy tonight. He was like, congratulations. He lost his category, but we won ours. But it was still a great time, and I just feel so honored and lucky that the LPO got to be a part of that.
And that's a refrain we hear a lot, especially from Louisiana artists, about how honored and lucky. You also brought up something interesting that I'd like you to expand on a little bit more, and we'll come back around this way, is you talked about a campaign. So tell us how that campaign goes, because I think it's interesting for each one of us up here. I remember Craig and I talked quite a few times when we were going through that whole process. So tell us how you ran that campaign, because there are some restrictions for members.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I'm not, so I didn't have those restrictions that we can talk about in a minute.
Yeah, I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but there are certain things that you can and can't do. Obviously, you are promoting your record to the voting members of the Academy. But you are just saying, I want you to listen to the album. Check it out. Consider our album when you are going through and making your selections. So we were very thoughtful in the way that we went about it, because it's by nature what we do is a large ensemble, right? We have 67 members of our orchestra. There's a conductor. There's myself. There's Lost Bayou Ramblers. There's also Esplanade Studios. There's the composers. There's all of those folks. So we really thought about how do we make sure that if someone is paying attention to someone's social media channels, right? There are people that might follow me but don't follow our conductor, or they might follow me and not follow the orchestra. And we have to think about, in many respects, as getting the message out to as many people, because you don't get a roster of who's voting in your categories. So you're just saying, hey, our album was really good, and I think you just take a listen to it. And I think it's just, you can't say, vote for me and I'm gonna thank you in my acceptance speech, or I'm gonna give you a kickback or anything. All of those things are restricted. But at the end of the day, really what you're trying to do is make sure that the people that are able to vote in those categories know that your album exists and that they should take a listen to it if they haven't so far, and recognize that, hey, there's so much good talent that's here in these categories, and it really is a campaign that needs to run over an extended period of time, because I don't know exactly how long the voting window is, and I know that it happens in phases, but you just got to stay top of mind for folks, because it's really important, and it's easy to fall into the background.
So as we hand it off to Craig, I do have one last question for you. Did you find that people were more receptive because you were from Louisiana and from New Orleans, as opposed to Hawaii or North Carolina, or, you know?
I don't know that for sure. What I do know is that we were the first orchestra nominated in this category, which was really great. And to be, you know, there are orchestras in just about every part of this country that do the things that we do. Not in the same sense, right? A lot of them are playing just purely orchestral music, and we know, and I think this was also kind of intentional on our part, that we know we're not going to compete with the New York Phils or the LA Phil, the Cleveland Orchestra, the really, really big guys that, can play the Germanic repertoire really, really well. Like, we can do that, but that doesn't make us unique. And what we have here is we have New Orleans as our backdrop. We have Louisiana as our backdrop, and those guys don't have it.
Well, they don't have Big Frida either.
They really don't. They really don't. So I think that a part of it was allowing us to stand out and really say that this orchestra is doing really cool and interesting things. And it wasn't just this one-off record that we were doing, right? It's in all of the concerts that we're doing. So it took a couple of years for us to actually build that reputation, for folks to know that what the orchestra is doing, we're not doing it for, likes, clicks, to make money, all of those things. It's great to get all of those things, right? We all need the money, but we do it because we believe in it. And I think that folks can feel that, like, specifically when we're talking about like producing records, that, one of the first things that I said was we really wanted to make sure that the experience was truly like highlighting the orchestra as a part of this sound of where we are, and not just, like I said, playing whole notes in the background.
Oh, and it was fantastic. For those of you that haven't, I highly recommend it. I didn't listen to it until after it won, and I apologize for that. But it was truly. I mean, Craig, tell us about your campaign. How did you come about, starting the process, and then getting that nomination, and then going to the next step, figuring out, hey man, how are we going to win this?
Well, almost right away, I called John Cleary, and I asked Cleary, "What did you do? How did you go about getting this?" Because sometimes there's a way you look in Billboard, it's all for your consideration. I saw it for your consideration already in Downbeat for somebody, So that's if you have a big budget, that's how you do it. You take big ads out and full page ads in Billboard or whatever magazines. So Cleary, he said the best advice I can give you is go through your phone contacts and call who you think it might be. You don't know they don't publish who's a Grammy member. You don't know. So he said, just call everybody. So I started calling everybody. I was annoying a lot of people, And then I think a lot of the guys in the band also, and there's 10 of us in the band, and we weren't members of the Grammy, so we didn't get to vote in that,
Did Grammy members reach out to you?
Did who?
Were there any Grammy voters that reached out? 'Cause I asked that only because I got a few really weird emails, and it was like Steel Pulse, who were apparently huge Rebirth fans. We've never performed with them, but they know exactly who Rebirth is, and they're like, we're letting you know we love the album and we're voting for it, and we're going to tell other people. So I'm curious if anybody else here is part of the process. Did anybody reach out to you guys?
For me, just my friend Jonathan McHugh reached out to me, but he's not a musician. He's not a Grammy winner, but he's involved in the Grammys in some sort of way. So not really. It was just, just calling and then Cleary said, he put me in touch with a publicist in L.A., and I called him out, and he helped us out a bit too, But we didn't take any big ads in any magazines for your consideration.
So it's very grassroots.
And the thing is, there's only 13 or so thousand members of the Grammys or so, maybe more now, I don't know. And, the thing is, how many of those, you can't vote in every category. So how many of those people actually vote in regional roots category? Could be just a handful, really, if you think about it.
And it's the people that really care that you have that connection with, and that was, and we can all go down the list of people we know, like, you're going through your Rolodex, you're sitting there going through your phone. Everybody's kind of making those next steps. Tell us a little bit about your campaign, because you were working out somewhere that you weren't thinking about putting a campaign together for a Grammy.
Well, man, I've definitely done a few campaigns. I mean, I go back to my first album. That gave me that was when I did the least campaigning on my first album, because I was actually signed to a label, and I had no idea about what was possible with the Grammys at that point. What I did know is that they had me play a couple Grammy parties 2 years prior to my first album coming out. And I remember meeting Chick Corea, meeting Diane Reeves. I met all these people who were label mates of mine. And so I'm playing this Grammy party. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just talking to people. Terry Lynn Carrington. I mean, it's like everybody's there. And then the record comes out. The label did one little video that me talking, celebrating the album. They didn't even say it wasn't even Grammy for your consideration. It was just about the album, about taking people through this album and what the concept of the album was during that time. No Grammy, no for your consideration. It was more so like, we're celebrating this album during this time period. They ran ads on it, and I didn't know. It was my first time. And then 7 o'clock in the morning when I got a nomination, it all kind of started to dawn on me like, wait a minute, I think these people might know what they're doing, And then I learned during that, because you got to think I've done it now as an independent artist and producer as well, so I see both sides. And you're right, when you talk about for your consideration, what I've learned to do is just celebrate the album you made and talk about, some of the things that were really cool. Why do you love it? Why do you? What did you put into the music? Because I think by doing that, I did it with Say You Love Me. I think that's why I got so attached to that song, because I talked about the process of making it. I literally took people through each instrument, and I had fun doing it. It wasn't really for a Grammy per se, but it was more so like, I enjoy making music, and I enjoy the process of doing this. And so it's tricky to get in the for your consideration world or the campaign world. I think the best way to do it and stay close to the art is to just celebrate what it is that you put into it. That keeps you in a safe space, when it comes to because I mean, it's a lot you can do. I mean, those Billboard ads, if you look at the Billboard magazine during Grammy season, it's loaded.
Every page.
It's like this thick too,
Yeah, I'm not even sure if it works, to be honest, because I'm like,
I don't know if it does either.
I don't get it.
It's a business, right? Billboard's trying to sell ad space. That's what they're doing.
They're part of the process. And you've been through this process, unless, Reed, you want to?
Save me for last.
Okay. Ouch.
It almost feels like politics at a certain point when when they said, "Do you want to do an FYC campaign?" I'm like, "What is FYC? What does that mean? I don't know."
So you've been through the process 4 times. Did you do anything different each time? Like, first time, was it just like, wow, and then second time you're like, man, I'm gonna win this? Like, what changed on each one? And kind of go back to you for a second on that too, because your mindset has to change. I'm just curious.
Yeah, the very first one was I woke up at 8 in the morning to a congratulations text. I was like, what are you talking about? I had zero thought that this album, the Chawa album, could get a Grammy nomination. The next one, maybe I was a little more confident and got another nomination. And then with the Rumble, again, being such a brand new band, really had no idea. Same thing, I got a I didn't even watch the thing. I got a congratulatory text. Was like, what? And I started crying. I think TJ Norris, my bandmate who's here, I think he did too.
And I think I can speak for everybody on this stage and everybody that's been nominated, and especially at the level these guys are. We all cry. Yeah. And it's literally it's that hard. I mean, the second time, it's funny you mentioned that you got a call. I didn't know we were nominated or in consideration until my phone started blowing up. Like, because the people that did the recording submitted but didn't bother to tell us they were submitting, yet we got a nomination. And so it really, people don't understand like the whole politics behind it, which is why I'm glad we're kind of leaving Reed for the back, because he can explain all of that.
But yeah, with the Rumble nomination, we didn't have any sort of management, no label, so we really had to put our heads together and do it ourselves. So we had, I think we made an iPhone note, a shared note with all the Recording Academy members. Kind of went down the line. All right, you know these people the best. You know these people the best. Send them a FYC text. I remember calling Jameson. He suggested we hire a publicist. We hired a publicist, and then we did a lot of trade podcasts and interviews, magazine articles. We didn't win. The next time around, we just opted not to spend the money, but much to Jameson's point, spent more time talking about the art and putting that forward. And to Reed's point, with there's more independent artists than ever winning. It's because the Recording Academy members are actually the musicians. They're involved with the art. So artistic integrity really matters now.
I 100% agree. So you guys are all voting members. Are you voting Louisiana?
They're not supposed to tell you. Shh. They're not supposed to tell you.
But we can do the secret handshake kind of thing. And
Wait, I can walk out the room if you need me to. Well, let me say a few things. So, first and foremost, as an employee of the Academy, protecting the integrity of the voting process is job number one. Because the Grammy is the highest award you can win in the music industry, mainly because, as Ari said, it's a peer award. It's the only peer award, really, in the space, right? The People's Choice Award, anybody who's a fan can log in and vote, right? And most of those kind of award shows are like that. That's what's different about us, is that part of my job is to make sure that the people who are voting members are qualified to be voting members because they're peers of the people that they're voting on, right? They're the ones making the records, writing the songs, twisting the knobs, making it happen. So starting there, we do have vote solicitation guidelines. The campaigns, everybody calls it, it's now, everybody just refers to it as FYC, for your consideration. And so, you know, I get asked every year, including this year, about 300 times. And look, my philosophy is this. You know, think about who your who the voting members are. They're the people on the stage, right? Do you want to have somebody call you up and say, dude, this is the best record you ever heard in your life, blah, 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 blah. You got to vote for this record. But if somebody comes up to you and said, dude, man, I put a year and a half of blood, sweat, and tears into this album. I'm really proud of it. I'd appreciate if you give it a spin. What you going to do?
I'll give it a spin.
Yeah. So to me, it's really, I tell people humility is king in this process, right? So I love what y'all are talking about. Talk about the making of the record, what I put into it, how it makes my heart sing, you know? That's what's going to get their attention, not some big, flashy, over-the-top campaign. And because, going back to that Billboard thing, you know, it honestly, as a 20-year employee of the Academy, I personally think that's an unfair move because these big major labels can buy 5 and 6 full-page ads in Billboard, and Billboard will sell an independent artist an ad that might be about that big, and you know, you could barely afford that, right? So to me, I almost wish that didn't exist, but it does, so we deal with it, right? But I also know that the independent artists, we're the biggest fans of music. We're the ones who make it. We probably consume more music than the average person, and we're hungry to hear what that, and we can also discern that artistic integrity or artistic merit over the average listener anyway, right? So to me, the more organic, the more humility, the more you put your heart and not just some fake bullshit into a campaign is what's going to get people's attention. So I'll start there.
I also, can I add to this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think what I love about the Recording Academy that's happening, and I think it's going to get even more strong integrity-wise, is like he said, the musicians and the people in the industry who are voting. Man, that's part of the reason. That's part of the way. Like when I look at this, I mean, oh my God, I think about when someone breaks through to win a Grammy, who you don't expect. What that says is that means that whoever the people who are voting respected the work in such a way, and it helps move the category forward. When someone who maybe is less known, like when Esperanza won, you know.
Dude, so I got 2 stories I want to tell y'all.
Go, tee them up.
Uh-oh.
So, Esperanza Spalding, do y'all know her? Yeah. Okay. So Espy gets nominated for Best New Artist, and she's competing against Drake and Justin Bieber, and a couple other people that we don't remember, right? And that's usually the case with Best New Artist. So, anybody know Lee Mergner? Lee was the longtime editor of Jazz Times magazine. Lee was in town because the Gen Conference, the first Gen Conference was in New Orleans, and it was not long after Katrina, and he was doing a panel on how the Katrina coverage helped the music industry grow, and I was on his panel. So Lee calls me, and I've known Lee for back in my label days, so I've known Lee for 20 years at that point, and he calls me up and he says, dude, come down here early and let's go grab some coffee. I'm like, yeah, bro, I'd love to come hang out. So we get down there, and first thing he says is, what do you think about that Esperanza thing? I'm like, dude, it just warms my heart that a jazz artist is like Best New Artist. Like, how the hell does that happen? He goes, yeah, but he goes, I got a theory. I'm like, what? He goes, I know you damn Grammy voters. Y'all are a bunch of musicians. I bet you she's going to beat Drake and Justin Bieber. I said, dude, from your lips to my heart, to my ears, whatever. I'm like, that would be so phenomenal.
It would be amazing. Yes, and it was. Yes.
So at that time, I didn't have the gig I have now backstage at the Grammys. I managed what's called Photo Deadline, which is they go through all the media, and anybody who's been in that room, y'all been through there. You weren't there this year. You weren't there. I know. Well, Avery went through it without you. You go through all these media interviews, and the last spot is Photo Deadline, and that's literally, I have a table of like 7 unmarked Grammys with a security guard watching them. And there's one room, and then the next room is like controlled paparazzi. There's literally like 30 or 40 photographers from the New York Times and the LA Times and blah, blah, all that shit. And I put a grease pad thing, and I say, Esperanza Spalding, Best New Artist, and they take a picture, and she comes out and holds the Grammy, and that's what you see in the paper the next day. So but we're backstage, so I'm watching on a screen about that big, and they announce Esperanza, and ring, my phone rings, and it's Lee. I was right. I was like, fucking right, you're right. That's awesome. So a couple of years later, and I'll tell you this about the Grammy process too. I have discovered more amazing music while I go through the voting process. And the one that stands out the most to me, and this is so ironic for New Orleans, because if y'all recall, we hosted for like 5 years, the Thelonious Monk Institute was at Loyola. And I was part of the team of people that brought them in, and Herbie Hancock was the chair of the board at the time. So in January, like 3 weeks before the show, I meet Herbie for the first time. I go have dinner with Herbie and all of these people from the Thelonious Monk, and I'm like, but in the voting, which was like 3 weeks earlier, I didn't know that Herbie had that Joni Letters record out, the record he did that he covered all the Joni Mitchell records and songs and did amazing arrangements. And like, I found it. I'm like, I'm a Joni fan. I'm a Herbie fan. I didn't even listen to it. I just bought it because back then you bought it on iTunes. And then I listened to it. I'm like, this is the best fucking record I've heard in a year. So I voted for it, right? So 3 weeks later, I'm meeting Herbie. I said, dude, that Joni Letters record is just off the charts. He goes, yeah, I just, it's what I always wanted to make that record. 3 weeks later, he's nominated for Album of the Year and for Best Jazz Artist. Well, I'm working Photo Deadline, and the jazz album category was in the afternoon. So here comes Herbie. I said, Herbie, I'm going to see you at the Grammys backstage when you win. He goes, yeah, I hope so, but, I'm not counting my chickens. So he comes through, and I'm like, Herbie, it's Reed from New Orleans. Oh, yeah, man, how you doing? I'm like, congratulations. So I bring him out to Photo Deadline, and he's got the Grammy in his right hand. And this is where these crazy photographers are like, act like you're drinking out of it, put it on your head, all this crazy shit. And at one point, Herbie takes it out of his right hand and puts it in his left hand. And one of the photographers yelled out, what'd you do that for? He goes, because I'm saving this one for when I win Album of the Year later tonight. Like, there ain't no way you're beating Kanye, blah, 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 all this shit, right? So last record of the night, I'm watching on the little screen, Album of the Year, Herbie Hancock. And my jaw hit the floor. And the entire media center erupted. And next thing you know, they're like, how can y'all give that Grammy to Herbie Hancock? He probably only sold 10,000 records, and freaking Kanye probably sold 30 million records. That ain't fair, blah, blah. And I'm like, you obviously don't understand what the Grammys are about. And Herbie came through, and he's holding both Grammys, and they're like giving him shit. And I'm like, don't y'all realize who this guy is? This is freaking Herbie Hancock. So then the last person that comes through at the time is our CEO, Neil Portnow, and they're grilling him. And Neil just said, shut the fuck up. Y'all obviously don't understand how the Grammys work. Our members vote on artistic merit, and they voted that this is the highest achievement in music this year, and that's how it works. And I mean, I just couldn't believe that the media people were giving Herbie all that shit. But dude, it was the most warming thing because it's the first time a jazz album had won Album of the Year since the year before I was born, and that was 1962 when Gilberto Gil won for Girl from Ipanema. That's the last time a jazz album won for Album of the Year. And so, to me, to the point that you made, it just speaks volumes to that our members voted for a frickin' jazz record over some pop or hip hop record.
So, thank you very much. And it's funny because you can feel the energy up here from everybody up here. It's like you can feel almost like you won or nominated that day, like today. Just it's a wonderful fraternity to be. Before I come through the last final round with us, I want to see if there's any questions from the folks out there. Any questions for anybody as a part of this process? It's actually truly an honor to have this many in one place for a meeting like this. Anyone? Going once? Going?
I'll ask one question. The money that the labels spend, is it worth it? Is there an ROI for them, or are they just spending money?
So what I will tell you as a manager, I know that the money he spent, he recouped and then some, because we sold more product. Of course, that was at a time when you had CDs, and I think at one point in time, I think as the LPs, our vinyl came out, a lot of people that had bought it first bought the vinyl, and that trend is still going. In fact, it's a big difference. But yeah, our online sales and at everything went through. So yes, I would say from an indie standpoint, it was. Anyone?
Well, we were independent, so we didn't have a record label. We put out a couple records many years ago on Rounder, and I think we still owe them for the toilet paper we used that day.
Sounds about right. And Paul, I know you had your hand up for a second.
I can add to this too, because I've seen it from both sides, right? I've seen the money be spent label, and I've seen it be spent out of my pocket, like as an independent. And you said, is it worth it? I think it's worth it when it's become a moment in music where we're all listening to music during that season. That's the thing I'm realizing doing right now. We just started today, maybe, or is it going on tomorrow? I'm getting emails already. I'm getting loaded up. But it's a time where everybody is listening to music. Yeah. And see, that's the thing. I think even putting out music during this time, or even because I'm going to listen to a lot of music over the next 3 weeks, and I'm going to check out the records. I've already been listening. I've been in certain rooms, and I'm already listening to music. So I think when you say, is it worth it? I think getting your music out there, besides the war, but the season and time that it is, I think, it's like a big time for music.
Do you think the voters are giving Louisiana artists more consideration than, say, a New York or a California or a Chicago?
Well, how does one category have all Louisiana artists in it the last couple of years?
Well, but we can take a look at kind of the progression in other areas too, like we can go, in different categories. You can go to how, Tank went through, that progression as well. Yeah. So I don't think there's any one right answer. I'm just curious because it seems, and that was kind of the premise of this panel was, why does it seem like Louisiana is getting more? Well, and I think that's a great question to leave with because we have so much more.
That's what I was going to say, is that it's not that we're getting more or whatever. I'm not the right way to put it. But I will tell you, as someone who does travel all around the world, all around the country for the Grammys, and when they find out I'm from New Orleans, they always have, this is my favorite musical city on the planet. Oh, I love this artist. Oh, when they came through last week, they killed it. we have the cachet.
It's
It
our
is a
culture,
cachet.
and we lead with our culture. It's our greatest
Yeah.
export.
And so when they find out somebody's from New Orleans, I think you're going to get a little bit of an extra bump, regardless. You know, they're going to give it a listen or whatever that might be. But we have the blessing of being in this amazingly fucked up city.
I almost want to end it at that, because you can't. That's a drop the mic moment. Thank you very much, all of y'all, for being up here. If anybody does have a question for any of us up here or whatever, I do want to end also with that plane ride back, and the pilot knew that we had won. I don't know who said something, because there was a bunch of people that were coming back on that same flight, and to have an entire plane full of people that probably had no clue who the fuck we were, to sit there and applaud New Orleans and the first brass band that ever won a Grammy. Thank you very much for all of y'all, your time and your effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being part of NOLA by NOLA's biggest night. There you go. Big thanks to these guys, everybody on this panel. Thank you all. Thank you to Danny and Travis, who put together a great show for us. And don't forget, we'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. For a day of sessions, starting with Idea Village, entrepreneurs pitching music industry companies and platforms to the crowd. So that's tomorrow starting at 11. We have panels until 4. Free Stellas are still available, and we will see you tomorrow night or tomorrow morning. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you guys. Congratulations. You are absolute rock star superstars. We appreciate you being here.